Here we are, the start, the location, the Milan-San Remo, where the riders will roll out. The beautiful city of Milan sits in the Po Valley, to the south of which, where the race will start, across the plains that grow much of Italy's rice. And here's the map of the race. Over primarily flat 143 k's heading south from Milan over the Lombardy Plains, the riders face the climb of the Ticino Pass before dropping down and onto the Adriatic coastal road, heading west towards San Remo. And then at 239 kilometres, the first of the three Capo climbs is crested through Ligure. It snakes its way along the coast. We go the Capomele, Cervo, Berta, Cipressa and the Poggio. 291 kilometres in length the race. 2 kilometres shorter than last year's edition. But a race for the real all-rounders. Spectacular weather conditions today, in the best of senses. So glorious weather at the start and at the finish. There's the view of the finish line. 250 metres to go on the Via Roma. 12 degrees, blue skies, wonderful light conditions with a gentle southwesterly wind, which will make it a little bit difficult on the run into the climb. So the riders rolled out earlier on today in glorious conditions. About 7 kilometres of neutral. Riders smiling, pretty happy. It just started just south of the city. 25 teams took to the start line. 18 World Tour teams, 7 wildcard teams made up of various pro-continental teams. There's a Pozzato just signing on. Gaviria, the young Colombian sprint sensation, one of the outside favourites for today. There's the Lampre Merida team, Diego Ulissi. Nasser Bouhanni just signing on there, one of the outside favourites, took 6th place last year. Another hot favourite just signing on, Michael Matthews. There's Team Sky, Geraint Thomas there, and there's Vincenzo Nibali. Again, not his favourite sort of course, but he'll certainly be aggressive in the last few stages. Greg Van Avermaet and his BMC team. Movistar signing on, and there, the man in the rainbow bands, Peter Sagan of Tinkoff.
Tirreno was unexpected, but yeah, everything went pretty well that week. The stage win, the win of Tirreno, and for me, it gives a lot of confidence for classics. And it starts today with Milan-San Remo. It's one of my goals of this year, and I hope to do good today.
I think the secret is, well, not the secret, but the plan is to be aggressive. And we come here today in the Cannondale Pro team with not only myself, but some really other strong guys with Schlachter and Moreno Moser and Navadauskas. So we have some really strong options, and I think we need to play every card to really try and break up the race and make sure that we're in the front in every time there's a selection to be made.
I have good form, and I've had a lot of good races in the last few weeks. So I think, yeah, the way I've come into it is probably as best as I can be. So yeah, hopefully I can try and get the result with the form that I have.
Australians have been pretty successful recently at this race. Have you been inspired by Matt Goss and Simon Gerrans?
Yeah, definitely. The way those guys won it, it was something special, and hopefully I can try and make history today and be the 3rd Australian to win the race. But yeah, also Oscar Ferrer has given me a lot of pointers on this Via Roma. He's won it 3 times, so yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good with his advice to see how I go.
Ningún colombiano ha vencido en ningún monumento. Y este es mi primer monumento. Esperamos que hacer las cosas bien y poder terminar bien en San Remo.
I feel good, so I think I done what I could, and then I also, you needed to have some luck in the race, that the race goes your way, and especially this race where it's so open in the final, a lot can happen, and yeah, of course we will try to make the race go in our pattern, but it's always difficult.
There we go, 2014 winner Alexander Kristoff. A few words there. Interesting that Michael Matthews has been speaking to Oscar Freire, picking his brains, and some great tips and advice. Will it be the year for Michael Matthews? Will he be the 3rd Australian winner Only time will tell. Meanwhile, we're going to head over to the race and live pictures now. So here we are on your screen now with just over 101 kilometres to go of Milan-San Remo. We have a breakaway of 11 riders that went away very early in the day. They had a lead of around 8 minutes at one point. You just see the graphic on the bottom of your screen. There was a deviation that many of you may have seen or got information about. There was a rockfall just after the descent of the Passo del Ticino at Arenzano. Very dangerous rockfall indeed, blocking the road. And we understand the riders and race convoy were deviated on an auto route. We think it's only added about 5 kilometres to the race total. But here's your breakaway, 11 riders in total. And we'll just run through those riders for you. Jedinas Bagdonas of AG2R, the Lithuanian rider. Sergei Tvetkov of Androni Giacottoli, one of the few Romanian professional cyclists on the scene. Mirko Maestri of Bardiani CSF is also there. Jan Barta, a regular breakaway protagonist of Bora Argon 18 in the mix. Ezrin Čurek of CCC Sprandi Polkovici in the orange jersey is also there. Roger Kluger, the German from I Am Cycling. Matteo Bono of Lampre Merida, he was in the early breakaway in last year's edition of Milan-San Remo. Samuel Conti of Southeast Venezuela in the grey and fluoro yellow kits is also there. Marcin Cilingi, himself a veteran of breakaways in Milan-San Remo, of Lotto NL Jumbo, also in the mix. André Perron in the white of Team Novo Nordisk, and rounding out the group is Marco Coldan of Trek Segafredo. Well, I'm Matt Stevens, and alongside me for the journey today for the last 100k of the opening classic of the year is former British road champion and general manager of Dimension Data, Brian Smith. Brian, I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, it's one of the, it's the big monument here in Italy, especially this weather today. It's absolutely amazing. You consider Paris, where the stage was cancelled, and obviously Tirreno Adriatico, but the weather here is absolutely fantastic for racing. It was 12 degrees in Milan at the start, nice and sunny, and traditionally we get a large breakaway, and the breakaway had an advantage of just under 10 minutes, and you can see it's been cut down by 5 minutes. We caught a glimpse of the teams riding at the front of the bunch. The surprise for me is Trek have actually put a rider in here. It means that they don't have to put any riders at the front of the peloton.
They certainly don't. It's an interesting strategy. As you see, one of the Tinkoff riders, looks like that's Manuele Boaro just taking the wrong side, and it is actually Dimension Data just setting the tempo at the front at the moment. But while we talk about the Trek Segafredo team, it's interesting they have put somebody out in front, as you say. They've got Cancellara there, the former winner, of course, but they've got real strength in depth, especially in relation to riders who can finish this race well. Bonifacio is there. He was 5th last year. They've got Fabio Fellini and Giacomo Nizzolo, both very, very fast finishes indeed. But of course, Brian, what that does do is just take the pressure off. But it's not something I expected to see either. Well, as we look at the bunch snaking along the Azorian coast, we're going to take our first commercial break. Welcome back to Milan-San Remo. Looks like a bit of a mechanical there for Mark Cavendish. Whether it's a puncture, looks like a rear wheel puncture for Cavendish. No panic at all from the former winner. Former British champion, world road champion too. Very experienced indeed. Pretty efficient change. Very quick tempo being set today. Around about 43 kilometres an hour they've averaged, bearing in mind there has been a deviation. We'll look at that in a little bit more detail for you in a few moments' time. With a wonderful shot there of the bunch. Welcome back. The bunch being led at speed now. Average speed for the race so far, just over 43 kilometres an hour. But earlier on, the riders did face an unexpected hazard. Nothing to do with the extreme weather protocol at all. But there was a landslide that disrupted the race. These are the pictures that we got from Valtteri, which meant the race had to be deviated and sent along the highway. Well, there we go. There's the picture of the landslide, a significant landslide. A couple of cars were actually crushed. We understand a couple of people sadly were injured there, but the race could not pass through. So there wasn't too much of a delay. This happened way ahead of the race. So the organisers did have the opportunity to reroute without causing too much disruption to the race itself. The race did about 5 kilometres further, deviated via the motorway, the Autostrada, and now they're back on schedule again. The breakaway rolling through extremely effectively. But Brian, over the last few years we've seen breaks go out to sort of 10, 11, 12 minutes, and even at this stage in the race, 95 k's to go, the gap has come down. It seems to be as if the teams who want to try and perform well in this race are kind of measuring their effort far more, well, a little bit in a more of a focused manner.
Well, when you look at the way the race has gone this year, you have to look at the tactics of a lot of the teams. And you know, we pointed this out just before with Trek putting one rider in. They've got a favourite in Cancellara, so I'm kind of surprised that some of the other teams allowed this to happen. But you can't control everything, because obviously the pre-plan before you go out in the team bus, it's like make sure nobody from maybe Tinkoff and BMC, possibly Trek, Orica, Green Edge get in the breakaway, because it gives the whole team an easier ride all day. So you know, when you look at the teams that are made up, we've got 5 World Tour teams in this break of 11, and then you've got the wild cards. The wild cards are here to get obviously the publicity. You know, they're not expecting too much from this race. If they can get to the finish, if they can get in the top 10 or top 6, that's brilliant for them. We've had wildcards winning in the past. Selig won with MTN Quebec, so there's opportunities. But this race today, because it's in good conditions, they're riding fast. You cannot allow the breakaway to get too much distance down the road, and there's 11 riders in it. But the importance is Colidan is there for Trek, and that's the important factor. It means that the whole of Trek do not have to put riders at the front. Here we see Tinkoff at the front, Dimension Data. You've also got Cofidis and Orica Green Edge, Etixx. So you get 5 teams. It looks as if maybe one rider from Lotto-Soudal is maybe helping out, but definitely we've got 5 riders from 5 different teams, keeping this gap about 5 minutes, and that's what happens. Jay Thompson is the rider from Dimension Data. He already knows what his job was yesterday. The breakaway goes away and he is going to be used to ride at the front. So 5 riders' jobs were already nominated yesterday, and now that's why the 5 riders are at the front, controlling the breakaway.
Well, there we go. Interesting composition, as you said, Brian. 5 World Tour teams putting the pressure, putting the onus on the other squads to ride as we go. Some absolutely stunning views here, and some of the best conditions we've had. Looking back over the last few editions of Milan-San Remo, we've seen some absolutely awful conditions. But this will, I think, affect... I think there'll be more riders in the mix because of the conditions we've got here, Brian. You know, still a long, long day, and a day that's all about conserving as much energy as you can, especially if you're in, you know, looking to be in at the kill at the end.
You're dead right, Matt, because at the end of the day, when you've got really harsh conditions, when Christoph won it a couple of years ago, it was purely because of the really harsh conditions, and it was difficult for everybody to sprint after that distance. But today we'll change it up a little bit.
Here we go. The first ever winner of this race was Lucien Petit-Breton in 1907. That was the first ever edition. The Frenchman took that one. Rolling through a few stats here. The youngest winner of the race was Eddy Merckx. 20 years, 198 days. And remember, he won this race on 7 occasions. An absolutely astonishing feat that has never been equalled. And I doubt very much it will ever be equalled. The oldest winner, Andre Schmil, in 1999, 36 years and 57 days. Also winner, member of Paris-Roubaix as well. Very aggressive rider. Loved the pavé, loved riding in the hard conditions. Andre Schmil. Most wins, we've already touched on that. Eddy Merckx, as well as being the youngest ever winner back in 66. The most wins in 7, 66, 67, 69, 70, 1971, 75. And his 7th victory was in 1976. Well, there you go. Lots of interesting stats, especially in a monument. So much history in this race. And some interesting stats looking back over the last couple of years that you may be interested in. and that's the number of riders that were in the finishing group. Got this interesting stat from the Inner Ring website, so thank you very much for that. 2015, last year, 26 riders made the finishing group. 2014, when Alexander Kristoff took victory in those bad conditions, 27 riders. And then previous to that, we had the course changes. So 2013, only 7 riders were there. 2012, just 3. 2011, 8 riders. And then prior to that, when the course was flatter, we didn't have the Mian climb, 25 riders and 34 riders. And this race so open. So it's the sprinters, the punchers, and the riders who can climb well too. Such an unpredictable race, and that's what gives it this wonderful tension. Welcome back. And it's welcome back to Mark Cavendish, who's just been paced back on to the back end of the peloton by his teammate, that's Serge Pauls. Cavendish had a rear puncture, but no panic at all for the Manxman. Bit of an outside bet for today. Of course, has spent the season, or the off-season, or the off-the-road season, sorry, riding on the track. He's ended up World Madison champion with Bradley Wiggins. What a memorable performance that was, but a real depth in strength in the Dimension Data team. Again, I think we might as well just run through some favourites, Brian. As you see, Kluge there, I think he's, well, that's again, this race is that long. It really does sap the strength. It's also very, gets stiffness in muscles. It's not a technique we see particularly often, Brian. I'd often put my heel down to stretch my hamstrings out. But again, a pretty skilled rider. But it is unusually long, this race, and we understand from information coming through to us that the addition of the loop, because of the landslide, has made this race 300 kilometres in length, but also add to that 7 kilometres of neutral. So I don't know if any riders for this particular race were sat on the turbo trainers like we see. I wouldn't have thought that happened, but 300 Ks is the full distance today, so real epic distance. But you do see it, Brian, don't you? It's important that you keep your, especially on a flatter course as well, it's very easy to get aches and pains in your lower back, etc.
Yeah, just stretching his leg out. Some people do it, like you say, just putting your heel down. Other people, put their leg over, their foot over the saddle. And Roger Kluge is another one. They rode the Omnium at the World Championships only a couple of weeks ago and got silver medal to Gaviria. Gaviria's riding this race as well. So, just touching on Mark Cavendish, he is an outsider. He rode through Tirreno. He rode well after a difficult Madison, as you mentioned. He crashed for it pretty hard. So, these conditions, there could be a lot of riders in the mix at the end. So you never know. But Nibali's come out and saying they're going to ride aggressively. There are other teams in here that are going to ride aggressively. When you look at the sprinters, Bahani's riding well. Matthews is riding well. Peter Sagan, is he going to do better than second? He's capable of doing it. So, but there's other fast sprinters in here, so it's how they play out. I would think that BMC's Van Avermaet would want it hard. So, BMC, Etixx, especially in Tirreno, were pretty aggressive and looked pretty strong. I tell you what, Cancellara looked really, really strong in that stage that Steve Cummings won, and he was just preparing. He was used in Tirreno by his team, but he's just preparing for this race, and he looks super strong.
He does. I mean, I think the key to this race, it is a race that is very, very open. Many riders, including Fabian Cancellara, the past winner back in 2008, has called it a lottery. Mark Cavendish is the same. It's unpredictable because, I was reading a very interesting interview with Ben Swift, who said generally there is a selection that's made through the accumulation of fatigue and the fact that the last couple of climbs, or the last 5 climbs if you include the trio of Capo climbs, Capo Miele, Servo and Berta, they're all set fair to just start to sap the strength from the legs. Then we hit the Cipressa and the Poggio. But generally speaking, although there's sprinters in the mix, the winner always comes from a relatively select group, and over the last couple of years, last year 26 riders in the front, the year before 27 riders in the front. But normally when you get a sprint from a small group of riders in a stage race, for example, generally the selection, unless it's been made in the crosswinds, has been made on the climbs. But here you always seem to get good sprinters in the mix, but again, a lot of them without teammates. One of the only teammates left last year was Luca Paolini, who's not here. He played an absolutely pivotal role in the race. I think that could be a very interesting factor as well. Completely sacrificed himself, but what the riders like what Cancellara will want, what Peter Sagan will want, what Greg Van Avermaet will want, and what I know Geraint Thomas and Ben Swift will want is an extremely hard finale to really whittle that group down.
Well, you look what happened last year when Team Sky took it on and they wanted it aggressive. You know, when we look at the final, the first, you know, red point in this final is 27.1 kilometres ago when it turns right to the Cipressa. Like we already mentioned, there are riders that know yesterday this is their job. Breakaway goes away, you're the person that's going to have to ride. Another know their job for positioning into that right-hand corner.
Some interesting points again there, Brian. We'll talk about those again at length in a few moments' time, but we've got some more stats for you at the moment as we look at the countenance of Matteo Bono. Number of victories by country for Milan-San Remo. Italy, unsurprisingly, top the leaderboard with 50. Belgium, second with 20. And as you can see there, France have 12 and Germany have 7. And the last win was, of course, by a German, John Degenkolb, took that fantastic sprint victory last year. Big shame he's not here, but he'll be back soon. And the last Italian winner was Pippo Pozzato, the playboy himself, way back now in 2006. And he is here riding for the Southeast Venezuela team. Don't think he's quite in the same form as he was back then. Most starts, Matteo Pozzato, and he's finished every single one. The veteran riding for Tinkoff, lovely fellow, has ridden a heap of Grand Tours as well. I'm sure his stats for numbers of Grand Tour starts is up there with the best as well. But Pozzato, a great character, and still racing extremely strongly. And the bunch being led by Dimension Data at the moment. The gap 4 minutes and 6 seconds, but clearly, Brian, we can now see Astana moving up to the front. There's a real sense of purpose about the chase now. But again, rather than trying to bring this back, it's just making sure, I guess, that it's brought back to like a controllable distance where they don't have to spend too much energy late on in the day.
Yeah, that's exactly that. And it's just about controlling things. 5 teams are riding, 1 rider each at the front of the peloton. They want to keep the tempo up, but it's obviously good to see that other teams are helping out. See Simon Yates talking to Matt White here. They've got a favourite. He rode terrifically well, 2 stage wins in Paris-Nice, and that's Michael Matthews. So this game plans for every team here. We just have to see how it plays out.
Well, we're going to take another short commercial break. Grab some bead on. Another superb shot of the peloton making their way towards the finish in San Remo. So there's your confirmation of the average race speed. I was slightly out before, 41.494 kilometres an hour. A couple of riders taking the opportunity to take a natural break on the right-hand side. And if you get to the front, swing over on one of these fast sections of road, you can actually finish your natural break and then just swing into the back of the peloton by just freewheeling. Little tip there for any of you out there ever going to ride Milan-San Remo. Another shots of Kluge there, Roger Kluge, the German rider on the IAM cycling team. Just having a bit of a stretch. A few minutes ago it was his right leg, making sure everything's symmetrical, having a nice stretch out on the left-hand side. And there's number 42. Just dropping back to get some bottles. That's Enrico Barban of Bardiani CSF. Welcome back. It's feeding time for the riders. Many of the riders in the breakaway dropping back, making sure the fuel levels are topped up. Same for the riders in the peloton. Domestiques making sure the team leaders have got enough to eat and enough to drink. And I think I was reading some tweets earlier on, Brian, before we came on air. I think it was the Cannondale team. They were just on the radio constantly, especially in the earlier stages of the race, just reminding the riders to keep eating and drinking as early as half an hour straight into the race, because as we said, the accumulation of fatigue, given they're going to be riding for nearly 7 hours, last year's winning time was 6 hours 46, you cannot, relax. You need to concentrate, because otherwise it's so easy over this sort of distance, even though the weather conditions are good, to suddenly get the hunger flat, and once that happens, it's game over.
Well, it's hard to concentrate for 6.5 hours, throughout, and you need that kind of constant reminder sometimes. These are professional bike riders, and but they do fall asleep from time to time, and you know, they need the reminders. But you know, because of the weather conditions, it'll mean that you can ride closer to the wheel. The bunch can ride a little bit more together, so you can save a bit more energy, because if it's wet and cold, there's a bit more, there's bigger gaps in the peloton, and you don't hold the wheel as close, so you're not getting that, you know, that benefit. So today's finish is going to be somewhat faster, possibly than the, you know, if it was wetter and colder, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be, you know, 60 or 80 riders coming into San Remo. There's always a break point when you go over Cipressa and then a Poggio, and you've got 3 capos before that. It's a whittling down effect, and it's always about, you know, 25, 30 riders that come into San Remo, and that's expected today. It's just a pure speed, and it just breaks because of the corners and the speeds in the Poggio.
Let me just show the shot of Manuel Cinziato of BMC getting some feed, some bidons into his back pocket, and a nice romantic slow-mo picture of Samuel Conti. Here's some more stats for you. Here we go. Finishing with more than 20 riders in the break in the last 20 editions, 55%. So 11 finishes from the last 20. There was more than 20 riders in the group. So an interesting stat there for you. And of the last 20 editions, a more straightforward stat, this one. 2 solo wins, Andre Schmil in 1999 and Fabian Cancellara in 2008 when he was riding for CSC, of course.
And he only went with about a kilometre and a half.
He did,
to go.
he only went with about a K to go. Just powered his way, well, just opened up a bit of a gap. And if you've been following Fabian over the last few weeks on Eurosport, you can see that shot repeated. But that's the danger. Fabian Cancellara in his pomp. And is it fair to say, Brian, looking at his performances over the last few weeks, his preparation for Tirreno, and the fact that he seems to be enjoying riding his bike after an extremely problematic year last year, he is definitely a threat without a shadow of a doubt. He's in fine form, he's relaxed, he's won this monument before, so he hasn't got an innate pressure of trying to win a monument for the first time like Greg Van Avermaet has, like Peter Sagan has. So he can relax and do what he wants, and he's got a great team around him as well.
Yeah, he had obviously a lot of bad luck last year, and that injury, I think it was Eduardo Flandrin when he crashed out and hurt himself. So he's come back. He said this is his last year, and you know, obviously luck has been on his side this year. He's had no problems, not been involved with any crashes, and he had a great start of the year in Mallorca with taking out that win over arguably a very hard course. And obviously I saw him in Tirreno, and he looked super strong there, winning the time trial. And you know, the stage that Steve Cummings won, he was on the front there, you know, ripping it to pieces. So it does look as if he's on good form. And the way he actually won Strade Bianche was amazing, because as we see now, Stibar is on some really good form, and to hold him off, it was, you know, exceptional. So, you know, I wish Cancellara best of luck in the classics, and even today, because he has been an amazing bike rider, especially in the classics, and this is his last year, and unfortunately we're not going to see him racing next year. So like you say, Matt, he can afford to relax. He's a sponsor's dream as well, so yeah, he'll be sadly missed in the peloton.
He certainly will. Reading one of the interviews a couple of days back with Cancellara, there's a few people have been suggesting he might give it another year, because there's a relative degree of ambiguity in relation to the intentions of Tom Bonen and Alberto Contador. They're saying they're going to retire possibly at the end of 2016, although that is a little bit open-ended. None have indefatigably said that they are going to stop. But Fabian Cancellara has been speaking to his peers within the peloton, Mark Cavendish being one, speaking to him in Tirreno, just clarifying, are you really going to be gone? Is this the last year? And he is definitely saying yes. So this is the final time you will see Fabian Cancellara riding this beautiful race, the opening classic of the year, and such an unpredictable race. I've been feeling the tension over the last few days. I think with the addition and the focus that social media throws upon racing in general, you get the sense the tension builds. It really is a race that is extremely special, and to win it really sets up a career. But there's Jay Thompson doing his job on the front. Only one Dimension Data rider just on the front at the moment. 5 other teams in the mix. A bit of a refresh for you with just under 77 kilometres to go. 11 leaders out in front. The lead 3 minutes and 39 seconds. And the 11 riders consist of Jemiras Bagdonas, the Lithuanian rider riding for AG2R, Sergei Svetkov of Androni Giocattoli, the Romanian on that team. He's the current Romanian national road champion. Mirko Maestri of Bardiani CSF is in the mix. Jan Barta, the Czech riding on Bora Argon 18. Edin Šurek of CCC Sprandi, Roger Kluger of Yam Cycling. Matteo Bono of Lampre Merida is there. Samuel Conti of Southeast Venezuela. Martin Chilingi of Lotto NL Jumbo. Andre Peron of Team Novo Nordisk. Marco Coldan of Trek Segafredo. That's your breakaway. We've got 76 kilometres still to run in Milan-San Remo. Please stay with us here on Eurosport. Welcome back as we see the riders negotiate. A small roundabout here, the peloton splitting, bisecting itself into in a wonderful organic fashion, as we see so often. It's quite a wonderful thing to watch. And again, the azure blue Mediterranean. 74.2 kilometres to go, and with each pedal stroke the tension starts to ratchet up as we get nearer the finish and the climbs at the face of the riders. The riders have already passed over the Passo del Cecchino, the big climb of the day, but a very gradual gradient there, so no real issues at all for the peloton. And then the drop down onto the flat plains, and soon they will face the triptych of Capo climbs before the Cipressa and the Poggio running onto the finish. So lots of toing and froing. Fabio Fellini there of Trek Segafredo, very, very fast finisher indeed. Looks like he's on domestique duties today. Racing straight back up the inside of the peloton to get in good position. But ideal conditions today. Very, very fast pace being set. Welcome back. 73.4 kilometres to go now, as the riders just hop over one of the sleeping policemen in the road there. This is your breakaway. 3 minutes and 42 the lead. The rider just on the back there, Adrian Šurek of CCC Sprandi Polkovici. Again, another gorgeous sight. The scenery and the architecture on this part of the world, Brian, absolutely stunning.
Yeah, I first came here when I was 16, spent my 16th birthday here along this coast, absolutely fell in love with it. So, you know, obviously I was there in July when it was, you know, really nice temperatures, but today is not so bad. 12 degrees in Milan when we started, and nice and sunny. 11 riders still in front, and, you know, looking at the strength and depth there, you know, they had almost 10 minutes advantage. And that's not a lot. We've seen gaps go up to almost, you know, 20 minutes in Milan-San Remo. But there are some stronger riders in this breakaway. Barta being one of them, a 31-year-old Czech rider riding for Bora, national time trial champion. You know, Svetkov, the Romanian champion, good rider. We've already seen Kluger for IAM. Tilingi, strong rider, 38-year-old, the Dutch rider.
Loves a long break, doesn't he?
Exactly. He's always getting involved with it. Bagdonas, the Lithuanian rider. Strong rider for AG2R. So the bunch aren't giving these riders any rope whatsoever. There are 5 teams riding at the front of the peloton. That's Orica, Green Edge, Dimension Data, Etixx, Orica, and Cofidis and Tinkoff are riding at the front of the bunch. So 5 teams riding, and they're just keeping it, and it's coming down even more. We're starting to get into almost the Capo area. Next up is Ciare, Albenga, and then Alessio, then Laguiglia, and then we start the first of the Capos, and it's Capo Mille, which comes at just over 50 kilometres to go to the finish.
Well, that was Gatis Mukulis just dropping back to his team car. He's getting a bead on, a couple of words of advice from his director sportif before rejoining the back of the group. But last year, Brian, we saw wetter conditions, nothing on the It wasn't the same as the conditions we saw the previous years, but it was wet, and it did make the descent of the Cipressa very, very slippery indeed. And it was quite stressful because there was quite a few riders that came to grief, even on the descent of the Poggio. But today, thankfully, it's dry. It is going to be a little bit different, isn't it, in relation to how the riders, or the feeling within the peloton in the last few kilometres when there's dry conditions. As you say, the gaps between the riders will be minimal, whereas riding in the wet on those descents, arguably, there was more damage caused on the descent of those 3 climbs on the run into the finish than on the ascents.
Yeah, it's still dangerous because when it's dry like this, they'll take more risks, and you know, coming off the Poggio, it's toe curl and stuff, and you know, when you're in the front group, there'll possibly be about 25-30 riders, and you know, some riders will be looking around and seeing some of the, you know, the top sprinters there. So will there be attacks? Yeah, of course there will. Cipressa, I think, in a day like today, you'll get a lot of the other teams without a kind of big sprinter capable of winning in a group sprint. I think they'll start racing it from the Cipressa now. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. But we know that 5 teams are just controlling things. Strong breakaway, they're still riding all together. The gap coming down under 4 minutes. Still a long, long way to go, but this is going to be a fascinating finish. Is it going to come to a sprint like last year? Who knows? Is it going to be a small group? Are we going to see a solo winner? That's what keeps us guessing. We don't know, but rest assured that there's a lot of riders wanting this hard in the end. So it'll be really fast over Cipressa and Poggio this year.
You know, we talk about the attributes needed to win a race like Milan-San Remo. You clearly have to be, well, you need luck on your side. You need to be in very, very good physical shape. You need to have conserved your energy. You need a very, very good team around you. But fundamentally, what you need is the ability to make a decision, an innate decision, and just one attack, whether it's the final sprint to victory or it's an attack that's going to stick. And I guess as we get nearer and nearer the finish, with so many riders arguably in the mix, and we'll see how things pan out when we hit the 3 capos, arguably more damage will be done on the Cipressa. But it's about not showing your hand too early, and again, not panicking under pressure. And that is a real valuable attribute, which we've seen Greg Van Avermaet over the last few months, specifically after being the bridesmaid for so many occasions. All of a sudden, almost, he's become, almost, I don't know, he's got this dark side to him. He's very, very clinical in his ability to finish, and that's certainly what you need in a race like this.
Looking at Van Avermaet, are there faster sprinters? Yeah, there's faster sprinters in this group. Everybody is allowed to field 8 riders, but these 8 riders we've already mentioned. There are 5 teams, Orica, Dimension Data, Etixx, Tinkoff and Cofidis. They already had pre-planned. When the break goes away, you have to ride on the front. So their riders are nominated. Then there's 1 or 2 riders nominated for that corner, the right-hand corner with just over 27 kilometres to go onto the Cipressa. It's all about positioning, and everybody knows that corner, so everybody's going to be trying to get into that with their team leader, and that's where you see crashes and the dangers. That's their job done. So then there's another job. If you get over the Cipressa, you're the person that's going to maybe attack from the Cipressa to the Poggio, allowing your team leader to sit on the wheels. Then it comes to where you're going to attack on the Poggio. You're going to get halfway up, or like everybody attacks towards the top. So it's intriguing how it's going to play out.
Well, a fascinating deconstruction of the tactical approach to this race. Please don't go away. The best is yet to come. Welcome back. 67 kilometres still to race in Milan-San Remo, and still our 11 riders relay through and relay off with a gap to the chasing bunch of 3 minutes now and 36 seconds. That's Martin Cilingi on the front, 38-year-old veteran from the Netherlands. Loves a long breakaway. And Matteo Bono now, the bearded rider for Lampre Merida, takes his turn on the front, and he was one of the riders in the breakaway in last year's Milan-San Remo, so replicating his feat of last year. There's the powerful figure of Kluge, Roger Kluge of Yam Cycling, rolling through. So real fluidity in this breakaway, everybody taking their turn at the front and sharing the pacemaking. Welcome back. The chasing peloton being led by Tinkoff and Dimension Data as they go through one of 2 formal feed zones today. So important, as we talked about earlier on at the top of the show, that the riders take on board as much fuel as they can, keeping things topped up. They'll be eating from within 20-25 minutes of the race, making sure things are topped up. And as Brian was talking about, there's a real structure to the tactics that are employed. Each rider with a set objective, whether that's a thing to do, whether it's to protect the riders from the wind, to go back and grab bottles, or to tee things up later on in the race. But, you know, we've got so many potential winners here, Brian, and this is one of the reasons why things get a bit frantic, get very, very stressful before the end. It's all about positioning as we head to the Cipressa, positioning, and then, of course, before we hit the final climb of the Poggio, and that's what ramps the speed up so much. And when you throw into the mix something we talked about yesterday, is the average speeds of races now, and the fact that pro riders are going quicker. There's various reasons for that. They've got more aerodynamic kit, they've got better rolling resistance, they're riding generally wider tyres with faster wheels, the bikes are more aero, and from a physiological perspective, riders are now pushing the limits. So, but the faster you go, the harder it is to actually make incremental improvements in front of that, isn't it? But things are getting, and it's just very interesting the way things play out. But speed, I think, is a factor, isn't it? Yeah,
as I think across all the teams, everything's getting closer and closer, and you see the dangers in the feed station there as one of the Tinkoff bag breaks as soon as he gets it, and unfortunately that can cause problems in the peloton. You just see a back wheel skip from one of the Cannondale riders, and that's the dangers of feed stations, and not the easiest places to work in, especially the Swan Ures. They do a very good job. There's 2 official feed stations today, and it's dangerous. These riders are going through these feed stations at 45, 50 k's an hour, taking bags, and one breaking, and we've seen damage done in the past. But we just saw a bag break from Tinkoff causing problems for Cannondale. But there is a lot of nerves in this race. This is obviously the longest of the monuments. It's maybe not the most difficult. When you look at Flanders or Roubaix, there's different points, there's different red spots where you have to be at the front. But today, everybody knows that 27.1 kilometres, when you turn right, you have to be in the front. But every team knows that. And so for the last 20 kilometres, it's like the finish of a race. That's what it's like. It's a finish. And when you get a finish, in the last 20 kilometres, they start riding towards that finish. So you'll see the speed rapidly go up, and this group possibly absorbed by then for that right-hand corner, and they'll start, ripping up the capos on the way there to get position for that corner onto the Cipressa. It's crucial because the speed they go up there, that's where it breaks. Well, we know when they hit the slopes of the Poggio, it's not a particularly steep climb. I mean, the gradients for the Poggio itself, it's 3.7 kilometres in length as the breakaway just weave their way through. Great crowds at the side of the road cheering the riders on. But the Poggio, 3.7 k's with only an average gradient of 3.7%. that pitches out at its maximum at 8%, so nothing particularly steep, but it is how late in the race, how deep in the race it is, and the accumulated fatigue at that particular point, and the sheer pace, the ferocity of the tempo that's set up there. And I know in the dry, we've seen over the last couple of years, they hit those climbs and the hairpins on the uphill section of that climb so fast that quite often the riders actually have to feather the brakes going on the uphill sections, and that just indicates how quick they're going on that climb. Yeah, exactly that. And is it going to be a really exciting finish? I hope there's no accidents, and it played out well. But everybody knows that when they start in Milan, there is a crucial point where you have to be in front. If you're not in front there, gaps starting to appear, and it's just the sheer speed. As you said, there's freewheeling around some of the hairpins and the corners, and it's just the sheer speed. And then you're onto the descent, then you're back onto the coast road, and then you hit the Poggio again. So again, it's all about positioning, and every team will want to position their riders towards the front as much as possible, and then throw into the mix riders that have been told you have to attack here, you have to make it hard. But yet again, no matter if it's wet or dry, there's always around about 20-30 riders come to the finish. And Paulini was a massive help for Christophe over the last couple of years. He's not here. He's not a teammate anymore of Christophe, so I think Christophe may miss him, But looking at recent results, you have to say, the favourites of today are, Cancellara, Sagan, Van Avermaet with his win in Tirreno, and really Matthews has to be a real favourite. Who's up there last year in the sprint, another year learned. He looks as if he's on some scintillating form in Paris-Nice with 2 stage wins, and I would say he is the big favourite for us because he can get over these climbs, he can sprint well. So we just have to wait and see what happens.
No, I definitely agree with your selections there. They are some of the out-and-out favourites, but a couple of riders I think that we should talk about a little bit. The French duo, Nacer Bouhanni, had a couple of wins already this year. Took that stage victory, took 2 stage wins in Paris-Nice. One, of course, he was disqualified from after clashing with the aforementioned Michael Matthews. Bouhanni looking very, very dangerous indeed. 6th in this race last year. In fact, out of the top 10, all apart from John Degenkolb, the last year's champion, who, as we know, is out through injury, 9 of the top 10 are all riding. Nacer Bouhanni was 6th. Edvald Boasson Hagen last year was 10th, but I think he's in far better form than the shape he was in last year, without a shadow of a doubt. Arnaud Demare, the other Frenchman, again had almost an anonymous year last year, but came out fighting in Paris-Nice and took a very, very good stage win on a pretty tough stage of Paris-Nice when they went on those white roads with several nasty climbs near the back end. But there is Fabien Cancellara on that bespoke new Trek, looking very, very comfortable, looking so powerful, looking pretty lean as well, as we saw him eating up the climbs in Tirreno Adriatico. He did look extremely good. But as we know, Cancellara on his day he doesn't need to go long, although his preferred method is to win alone. He can sprint very, very well from a small group as well when he's on form, if he times it right.
He's already proven how strong he is at sprinting over this distance with these Palmares over the last few years in this race. So he won't be far away today. It's a big difference sprinting after 300 kilometres and 200 kilometres. That's where I think maybe Bouhanni might be not as strong as maybe some of the riders like Christophe. And Christophe, he admits he's not the fastest rider in the peloton, but it's his strength at the end of 300 kilometres that makes the difference.
Definitely. The sprinter's legs certainly deadened by the accumulation of fatigue over the 300 kilometres that the riders will be facing today. Remember, 291 kilometres was the original distance, but the race has been diverted, upping the distance to 300 k's. But before all the action kicks off, we're just going to take another short commercial break. Please don't go away. On Eurosport, the home of cycling. Bathed in sunshine, the peloton moves ever onwards towards the finish in San Remo, and there's a flick of the elbow from Manuel Boaro. Thompson takes over. Stein Vandenberg looks like he's typing something into his head unit there. The powerful Belgian rider for Etixx. They are the riders chasing, and here are the 11 escapees out in front. The gap slowly being whittled away. Beautiful views of the Mediterranean, the azure blue of the sea just to the left, and the riders now taking an opportunity to freewheel for a bit. I can guarantee that will be a welcome break over a primarily flat parkour. It's nice to freewheel every now and again, save valuable energy. Ooh, there, Moto coming into contact with one of the riders midway down the bunch there, and it looks like it has caused a bit of a ripple effect. So a couple of riders coming to grief there. Number 118 was Julien Vermont of Etixx. So a touch of wheels has brought several riders down. With just under 59 kilometres to go. Let's have a look at the slow motion replay. I think it was a touch of wheels towards the back end of the peloton. Again, riders in such close proximity. Yeah, 3 or 4 riders coming to grief. Nothing too bad, I don't think, by the looks of that. But Vermont finally getting back on his bike, and the other rider there is Charles Planet of Team Novo Nordisk, the Frenchman, riding on this particular squad. A big shove from his mechanic, and he is back on his way again. And with 57.8 kilometres to go, it won't be long before we are on the 3 small climbs that effectively serve as an hors d'oeuvre for the 2 big climbs in the finish. It's the trio of Capo climbs, Capo Mele, Capo Servo and the Capo Berta, which come with 51.7, 46.6 and 38.7 kilometres to go. And without a shadow of a doubt, I think we'll see the peloton really ripping up these 3 small climbs as we pass through Alassio.
Yeah, it's starting to hot up. As you said, it's a very nervous race. Everybody anticipating what's coming up. 11 riders in front as we pass Alassio. The gap coming down very quickly now. Bagdonis is there from AG2R. Maestri of Bardiana, Svetkov of Androni, Barta of Bora, Kurek of CCC, and Kluge of IAM, Bono of Lampre, Conti of Southeast, Terlingi of Lotto NL Jumbo, Perron of Novo Nordisk, and Colidan of Trek. So 5 Italians in this 11-man breakaway.
Yeah, and 5 of the teams in the front are World Tour teams. As you pointed out earlier on, for the first time, the gap has now come down to under 3 minutes. 2 minutes 54 is the gap. Really eating into this lead, the peloton now. But the group in front will try and stay away for as long as they can. And I'd imagine that 1 or 2 riders from that group, if they're feeling particularly fresh and feisty, may try and go solo to maybe crest the Cipressa alone, but that's going to be a very big ask because the speed will only increase. At the moment we've got effectively 3 or 4 teams, I think, riding on the front, Dimension Data being one of them, Tinkoff also one of the teams riding hard at the front, and Etixx-Quickstep also there. But remember, at the moment, teams only putting 1 rider at the front. And Brian, we talked about the making sure you measure your effort. It's not just the riders individually, but it's about a team also using its resources effectively and strategically, isn't it? So just putting the guys at the front at the right particular time. There's no point in spending your troops too early, because resources in this race, especially around a protected leader, absolutely vital.
It is, and that's why Vermont was involved with that incident a little bit earlier. He'll be needed. There's already a pre-plan for what his job is, so he'll have to get towards the front of this peloton as quickly as possible, because we are coming into Laguiglia next, and then we'll hit the Capamili, and you know, the climbs start and the pace goes up, and you have to be in the front. And that's why at the front of the bunch you can see there were 5 teams riding: Orica, Dimension Data, Etixx, Tinkoff and Cofidis, but they're kind of starting to get swamped now from other teams. They don't want to ride on the front, they just want to be at the front, and that's where the danger lies, and everybody gets slightly nervous as we get further along this coast.
Well, many riders will of course know this course very, very well. The parkour hardly really changes, the running generally the same.
The thing is, Matt, there's still a lot of teams base themselves, especially after Paris-Nice, they'll base themselves in this area and
been out, yeah.
look at the routes, do recons, and you think, well, you rode it last year, you rode it the year before, but it's just to refresh your memory, because you can't remember all the stages, all the races that you ride. So it's good to just give them a bit of refreshment.
And as you say though, Brian, as we see the arrowhead formation on the front, the pace really starting to lift now. Definite difference in shape of the peloton. Dimension Data moving up on the left-hand side in that new white livery of theirs for the 2016 season. Still Manuele Boaro, the Italian, remarkably good time trialist, vital component part of the Tinkoff squad, looking after only 1 rider. Their team is all about 1, but in the form of number 1, Peter Sagan. And as we pass through Laguiglia, there is actually a race in Laguiglia at the back end of the season. Or was it the early part of the season? The start of the season. No, it was one end, bookend in the year, the Trophy Laguiglia. But a team that we haven't talked too much about, we've seen them put one of their troops on the front in the form of the enormous Stein Vandenberg, Etixx-Quickstep. You know, we talk about Fernando Gaviria. Many of the bookies 16-1, but a debutant at this level, does he have the ability to win this race? I mean, that performance in Tirreno Adriatico where he put away Caleb Ewan, both of those 2 young riders, stars of the future in terms of sprinting, so exciting to watch. But the gap they put between themselves and the rest on that little uphill finish, impressive. Even more impressive when Gaviria actually sprinted on the hoods. Imagine if he got a little bit more aerodynamic. But realistically, do you think Gaviria has a chance? They've got other options, of course. Zdeněk Stybar is going really well. Tom Bonin, we've not even mentioned him. If he gets to the finish, you never know. But I don't know if his form is that good. But what about the young Fernando Gaviria for you?
Oh, he's such a talent, and in fact, credit to Cavendish. He actually said, you know, he's the favourite for that stage in that type of sprint. So Yeah, he's a super talent. Won the Omnium in the World Championships in London. The question is, how will he sprint? Because he's so rapid, how will he sprint after 300 kilometres? This is a nice Milan-San Remo for him. He could be in the mix, he could be there. But on the stage that Van Avermaet won in Tirreno, he was in that front group and got, dropped in the last kind of climb. So looking at the form guide, I think the speed they're going to go over the Cipressa and Poggio towards the end, I think, and especially at this distance, they're going to be a little bit too much. Do I think he can win this in the past, in the future? 100% definite. But it's great to see these young talents come through. We've seen, Cavendish dominate the sprints in the past, and as far as a cycling fan's concerned, I don't like to see domination. I like to see other people coming in, and we've got some great young riders coming through. Yesterday we saw another sprinter coming through in the Hans Am Classic, so it's great to see Caleb Ewan and Gaviria battling it out. So I'm all for this, but Bonin, I think, will use his experience. Stibar, I think he has to attack the Poggio.
Just under 53 kilometres to go. We're getting into the business end of Milan-San Remo 2016 now. The gap to our 11 leaders out in front is 2 minutes and 18 seconds. That's the figure of Jan Barter, the Czech rider. Another crash at the back of the peloton. Very nervy times now. One of the riders of Lampre Merida looks pretty well in a bad way on the floor there. Can't quite pick out his number. A couple of riders from AG2 are also caught up in the turmoil. This just shows how nervy things are.
Just look at the wing mirror in that car. That's all it is, and the scrapes along the side of the car. It's like the sports directors are and behind saying, move up, and obviously you're moving up in the left-hand side, clip a wing mirror and hit the car, down you come.
Exactly, it does look like it might be Sasha Moduluk. The rapid finisher will get confirmation of that. Look at the front wheel there, crushed. And I think, as you say, Brian, looks like somebody has maybe clipped a wing mirror of a car and caused a ripple effect to within the middle of the peloton. And a couple of riders there from Cannondale also down. So very unfortunate, but this does happen as things get very nervous. It is number 148, in fact. It's Federico Zerlo, so it's not Modelo. Federico Zerlo, unfortunately, will be out of the race. A big shame for the Lampre Merida team. They've got some very, very strong riders in that roster. Diego Ulissi, extremely strong. He'll need to win from a very small group, but may attack on the climb. They've also got David Chimolai, who was 8th last year. And of course, Sasha Modelo himself, a very, very good sprinter indeed. But we're on the first of the 3 small climbs that come before the Cipressa and the Poggio. We're on the Capo Mele now. This short, sharp climb. In only a few kilometres' time from the top of this climb, they'll descend and go straight up the Capo Servo before then ascending the Capo Berta at 38.7 kilometres. So the pace really starting to lift now. And it's still Thompson of Dimension Data on the front.
The thing is, you'll hear these crashes behind, the scrape of metal and the bangs. And
it's a horrible sound, isn't it?
Yeah, and it just increases the nerves. And you don't want them. You want them to relax. But when you get everybody, sports directors saying, look, guys, you need to move to the front and keep on, shouting at them to be able to do that, because they know how important it is. You get these compressions and all of a sudden you start hearing crashes behind, and it just creates this nervousness in the whole peloton, and everybody wants to ride in the front. And when you're in the front, you want to try and save as much energy as possible, because predominantly along this coast today there is a bit of a prevailing kind of headwind, and for the riders riding at the front, they'll actually feel it, and they'll slowly sap their energy, and you need as many riders towards this crucial point, the red point of 27.1 kilometres to go into the Cipressa.
Cannondale now on the front, driving hard. They've got a very interesting roster of riders. It's worth giving a mention, I think, to Simon Clark, who moved across from Orica Green Edge. He's one of my outside bets for this race. He's had a great start to the season. He's already got a win on the score sheet. And when you look back at his palmares, he's matured ever so gradually over the last few years, a really steady progression in terms of building strength as a rider. Wore the pink jersey in the Giro last year, finished top 10 in the World Road Championships. And I think, Brian, for this race, because of the distance, because of the way it's run, gradually the pressure gets ramped up, especially at the back end of the race. It does suit a rider who can ride well in the World Championships or in the Worlds, because although the Worlds on a circuit, it's the same sort of race where it just distant from one point of view, and then the other thing is, of course, the gradual ramping up of the pressure. So Clarkey, for me, a good outsider.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why they're putting riders on the fronts. They want to up the tempo, keep their riders towards the front as much as possible. We have got pretty much a majority of the peloton. The only non-starter, I believe, was Moreno Hofland of Lotto NL Jumbo. We've lost a couple of riders due to a couple of crashes. I think Zurlo doesn't look as if he'll get back to the race, but predominantly we have most of the riders still in this race today with 50 k's to go.
We certainly do. 50 k's to go, and the descent of the Capo Mele for the riders in front, and that's the 11 breakaways. The lead approaching 10 minutes very early in the race. There's a couple of riders now trying to get back in contact.
Bakalan's in the far side, and Bakalan's is the leader. He's riding fairly well. He's in that group.
He's in good form this year. Bakalan's has already had a win. He is a protected rider. But we're just talking about, I mean, Brian, explain, especially given how long this race is, we talk about how important it is to measure your effort, not expend any energy. Normally in a race of 160, 200 kilometres, if you have a puncture or a mechanical and you drop back, really the kind of impact it will have on you in the overall outcome of the race is negligible. But making an effort like that in Milan-San Remo could have a real detrimental effect, because you just want to save as much as you can until that critical point in the race.
But sometimes with crashes and these other things, and you get nervous, and that's where a good sports director comes in. He just keeps the riders so calm, no panic. Make sure you're eating and drinking, make sure you're doing this and doing this. Some riders like it. Some riders like a sports director behind shouting at them, do this, do that. Other riders like a sports director not to shout them, to encourage them. Just say to them, look, you need to do this, you know, not that you have to do this. And different sports directors manage their teams in different ways, and it's all about keeping the riders as calm as possible and saving as much energy as possible, and it's experience of being in the front at the right time.
It certainly is. Many riders chasing to get back in contact, and meanwhile, our latest time gap, the lead has really tumbled now, 1 minute and 38 seconds.
This is Agnoli trying to get back on, looks like, and looks as if he's changed his bike, so it's a bike change for him. Probably involved with a crash or a compression. Sometimes when you get compressions like this, you get you know, the gear hangers or anything like that kind of ripped off the bikes, but he obviously doesn't want the TV camera there with his team car just behind him.
Certainly not. The tooting of the horns, a couple of riders from Lotto and a Jumbo just coming back down the line, but meanwhile up ahead is our breakaway, Jan Barta of Bora Argon 18, 31-year-old Czech. Great time trialist, is the national champion of the time trial of the Czech Republic. Always eager to get in breakaways, and a real vital component part of every move. Imagine if you get in a move with him, you'll know he's going to really assist in the pacemaking. But Lotto-Soudal in red now moving up near the front, and they've got Tony Galopin in their number, top 10 last year. Well, 47.8 kilometres to go, and still riders who caught up in those earlier crashes on the Capo Mele trying to make their way back to the peloton. This is Adrian Hoskis of Poland. Finally just makes contact with the back end of the bunch. That will be a relief for him, but at what cost? A furious chase back through the race convoy. But as you say, making your way back through the convoy, Brian, you know, it's about the kind of the spirit and the confidence that's instilled by the director sportif. It's about not panicking, because at this stage of the race, if you put yourself into the red, you've got the adrenaline flowing as well. It's all about being as composed as you can, because things do happen. You get race leaders taken out of the race or having mechanicals, but again, it's all about panicking, using the convoy. There's still a fair distance to go, But again, the conservation of energy, absolutely vital. But again, it is a skill, because some riders panic, others have this innate ability to just relax regardless of the situation and just make their way naturally back through to the bunch.
Yeah, they certainly will. Looking at the effort now on the left-hand side from Lotto-Soudal, that's Adam Hansen, the Australian at the front, and another effort from the Australian team, Orica Green Edge, on the right-hand side. But looking at Lotto-Soudal, they've got the Bucherer here, Tony Gallopin, who showed some good form in Paris-Nice. Adam Hansen is riding on the front. Pim Lichtar, Jurgen Roelandts, Marcel Seberg, Van Aert and Lars Bak. So they're looking to maybe try and make it a little bit harder, because I don't think they've got a fast enough rider to beat the likes of Sagan and they types, so, and Christoph. So that's why they're riding on the front, keeping the kind of tempo high. And again, it's all about positioning. And I would think that they would be a team looking for options in the Cipressa and Poggio.
Definitely. Well, I think the fastest rider in their number is Jens de Bucherer, but the former Belgian road champion. But as I say, I think the race at the back end could be a little bit too ferocious for him. So all the troops on the front, no doubt looking after Tony Gallopin, who was 9th in this race last year and rode well at the back end of Paris-Nice, a real protagonist on the final stage, helping Geraint Thomas, or assisting Geraint Thomas in the chase to get him back on terms with an absolutely rampaging Alberto Contador. A fantastic race, Paris-Nice, but Gallopin definitely in good form.
The thing is, we can look at the form guide. You look at Paris-Nice and Tirreno Adriatico, and you see where the Milan-San Remo winners come from. And it was predominantly Tirreno before, and then you had some from Paris-Nice. But I think the cancel stage in Tirreno has helped the riders from Tirreno Adriatico, because it's meant that a lot of the riders in Tirreno haven't come out at kind of on their knees, because Tirreno is a hard race, and to finish the race only a few days before Milan-San Remo, over almost 300 kilometres, you have to recover quickly. And I think that cancel stage means that there's a little bit more zip in the legs of some of the riders coming out of Tirreno.
I suppose when you look at it, there's a stage cancelled in Paris-Nice and a stage cancelled in Tirreno, so in terms of distance covered, it's pretty much even Stevens. But I know there were numerous riders, including Fabian Cancellara, not so much Vincenzo Nibali. I can understand why he was disappointed the stage was cancelled, but I still think the right decision was definitely made by the organisers, RCS. But it meant that the riders didn't race in cold conditions. I mean, when you're racing in the cold, your immune system is put to the test, especially riding mountains in the cold. And remember, the stage in Tirreno wasn't just about the mountaintop finish. There were several climbs that went above 800 metres throughout the day before the finishing climb, and that's one of the reasons that they cancelled the stage, was the risk of ice and snow above 800 metres in general, not just the finishing climb. But that's in the past now. But I think all the riders from Paris-Nice and all the riders from Tirreno, it's difficult to split the two now, and difficult to distinguish which is the better preparation. As we see Valerio Agnoli just moving up the outside. He's had a very difficult chase to get back in contact. Finally gets onto the coattails of the peloton. The fun will be able to take a breath. But 1 minute and 32 is the lead now for our 11 riders out in front. They've descended the Capo Servo. The next climb, or the next short climb of this trio of climbs towards the back end of Milan-San Remo, will be the Capo Berta. They'll crest that at 38.7 kilometres to go. Then we have some flat, and then we ascend the legendary Cipressa, and then the Poggio on the run into the finish in Milan. This is the town of Cervo. Absolutely gorgeous view, some wonderful aerial shots. We're just going to take another short break. Please do not go away. Welcome back to Milan-San Remo. 42 kilometres only to go now to the finish on the Via Roma in San Remo. 1 minute and 25 seconds is now the gap to our 11 leaders. And the bunch now really moving at some speed. One more small climb to go. And that's the Capo Berta before they approach the Cipressa and the Poggio. But the dual arrowheads at the front here, Tinkoff on the right in that fluorescent yellow colour that we've got so familiar with and used to over the last couple of years. And on the left-hand side was Lotto-Soudal there in force. But a couple of riders, Brian, that we haven't really touched upon, and I think we should before we get into the sharp end of this race. Movistar, Alejandro Valverde, perhaps, bit of an outsider, but again, he's going to have to go long, I would imagine. And JJ Lobato, previously finished up there in this race, but really his form of late, not really seen too much of him. We'll talk about that in a few moments. Welcome back. Just over 41 Ks to go now in the 2016 edition of Milan-San Remo. The lead to our 11 leaders, and there they are, is tumbling all the time. Two of the small climbs have already gone. The Capo Mele, the Capo Cerro have gone. We've still got the Capo Berta still to come, and that comes with 38.7 kilometres to go. So very shortly, the breakaway will be on that climb, closely followed by a chasing bunch, which at the present time is being led by Tinkoff and Lotto-Soudal. But we're just going through some of the favourites, some of the outsiders for this race. What do you think of Valverde's chances today? It's difficult. Lobato is their fastest sprint. They've also got Rojas, who is pretty good. But Valverde's chances today, what do you think, Brian?
Look, it depends on how the other teams ride. If we're on Poggio and Valverde, Nibali, maybe 2 or 3 other riders go together, yeah, there's a possibility a small group can come to the finish, because that's where Valverde can possibly win. But I don't think that's going to happen. It has to be really hard. The thing is, it's the speed that they got up the Poggio. It's very hard to get a big gap. You're going to have to see Valverde and these riders attack pretty much in the first kilometre of the Poggio to get enough gap. So I think it'll come back together. I think you're right. Lobato is possibly their man today. They have to have numbers there to be able to help him. But I think, you know, from seeing the pictures here, you can see Betancourt for Movistar riding at the back. I think he's just looking at maybe at the racing kilometres. But they are the UCI's #1 team. You know, respect to that. They have been over the last couple of years. And Valverde, I think, will be there looking after the likes of Lobato, making sure he gets over the Cipressa and the Poggio in a good position. Potentially he's looked good this year already with a good win in the Dubai Tour up the dam.
Definitely. As we see Emanuele Boaro, I think his job was done. He spent a lot of time on the front driving this bunch along, and you can just see the slight inclines of this climb, the Capo Berta. Nothing too much to worry about, but again, it will sap the strength from the legs. It will really start to bite. So different when you hit a climb in a primarily flat race. You're used to racing flat out on the flat, very, very fast, and you get that nervous feeling in your stomach when you hit a climb. These conditions are better. It's even worse, it's amplified when the weather is cold and your legs feel like big pieces of wood. But this little climb will hurt. Remember, very deep into the race now. 300 kilometres the total distance today when you factor in the addition of the deviation because of the rockfall at 130 kilometres around Valtteri, where the riders had to deviate. So a very, very long day in the saddle. We'll be approaching 7 hours when we cross the line. And still Tinkoff, and there's Tossato on the front for them. And Orica Green Edge also riding very hard. And nearly a minute now to the leaders, so this lead now really, really coming down, Brian.
Yeah, Orica had Joel Jensen at the front, their new signing from last year. Just the compressions at the back and it's kind of stop-start. This is probably the hardest of the capos. You can see the breakaway starting to slow down. Koledan knows what his job is today. He has to keep the pressure on. The longer he's in front, the easier it is for his teammates to just kind of sit in the wheels. But the closer we get to this crunch point, the right-hander up to Cipressa, then that gets thrown out the window because you know, Cancellara has to be looked after by his teammates to get a good position into that right-hand corner.
He certainly does. And again, Trek Segafredo have an extremely strong squad. Cancellara, the out-and-out favourite for their team. But should it come down to a sprint, although over this distance, Cancellara himself can certainly sprint extremely effectively. You have to look at Nicolo Bonifacio, I say his name because it was painted all over the wall in a big mural. But there's the world road champion, Peter Sagan of Tinkoff. What can he do today? He's won the World Road Championships, of course. He is the current champion. Never won a monument. Could this be his day?
Well, the thing is, Matt, they're doing a very good job, but they are expending a bit of energy with some of the riders, but they know that some of these riders will not be any use on the Cipressa or the Poggio, so you need to use them up now. And we saw also there Tozzato was leading the way. He's probably going to do a job to the Cipressa. Adam Blythe is also in the ranks of the Tinkoff team, but just as the pressure starts to be applied, we've already just over 6 hours of racing, and you can see some of the riders starting to struggle at the back of the peloton.
One of those was Carlos Betancourt at the back. He's struggled with his weight over the years. He's come across the Movistar. Yet to see him really perform yet, but now the pressure really starting to tell on the break. The riders in the breakaway there. Bagdonas of AG2R looking like he was starting to struggle, just losing the wheel in front, forcing Roger Kluge to go round him. The Tifosi at the side of the road absolutely love this race, and still the pressure is applied. The veteran on the right hand side, Tozzato, looking very, very good indeed. Jempi Drucker on the front there for BMC.
Well, this is making it a lot easier when you've got teammates like that, like BMC. The third rider in the BMC colours in the red and the black is in fact Greg van Avermaet. You can see Tinkoff in the fluorescent yellow looking after the world champion. It's so easy when your teammates are riding at the front, and they can relax somewhat on the Capo Berta and relax in the run up to the Cipressa. But obviously it's using up your teammates, but we've seen this before. Van Avermaet and especially Peter Sagan are good at looking after themselves. They don't need too many teammates. But in the end, I think they will, but they want it to be hard. Van Avermaet riding third wheel on the left-hand side for BMC, the world champion right up there. They want it difficult. They don't want to come to the finish with the likes of Christoph and these other kind of sprinters, so they want to make it difficult.
Definitely, that's why we're seeing BMC. Really good point there, Brian. BMC really riding hard on the front. They've slashed another 20 seconds from the lead of our 11 breakaways. 44 seconds they have as they descend the Capo Berta. Next up on the menu is the Cipressa. That comes with 21.5 kilometres to go. And then we have the legendary Poggio at 5.5 kilometres to go. Then the plummet down, and then it's just 2 kilometres to the finish line on the Via Roma. It is going to be a spectacular finale, that is for sure. Tinkoff still drive it on the right-hand side. I can just see tucked in behind. Haven't touched the front yet. Good tactics employed by Team Sky. Geraint Thomas to the fore. Peter Kenyak as well in the white jersey of British road champion. I've also seen Luke Rowe there. Mikhail Kwiatkowski, the former world road champion. He's looking good. So Team Sky, another team we haven't talked too much about, but real depth in strength, giving them plenty of options as we head towards the back end of this race. We're going to take our final commercial break. .5 kilometres to go of Milan-San Remo. Our 11 leaders now have only 47 seconds on a peloton that is focused and bearing down at speed. 7 riders remain. There were 11. 8 riders remain. Pardon me, they were 11. 3 of their number were dropped on the steep climb of, or the relatively steep climb of the Capo Berta. Now they have another very flat, fast section before the approach to the legendary Cipressa climb. Just under 34 kilometres to go. In Milan-San Remo, 45 seconds to our leaders, who now number only 8. 3 of those number were dropped on the climb, and it looks like Cialinghi is now attacking. He's got the rider from Trek Factory Racing with him, Marco Coldan, going clear, putting the pressure on the other teams. We thought, Brian, there'd be a couple of attacks from this breakaway, and 2 of the most experienced and strongest riders from that break have now gone solo, trying to hold on for as long as they can on the approach to the Cipressa.
Well, good tactics from Trek Segafredo. They obviously put Coldan in this group for a reason, and his job is possibly to get onto the Cipressa before the peloton behind. Cialinghi is another strong rider, but these next few kilometres are crucial, and you can just see constantly people are banging into each other. This is the crucial point of this race. They're all riding into this the Cipressa, the right-hand corner, with 27.1 to go. And it looks as if one rider from Cannondale and one rider from Katusha are now looks as if out this race.
Well, it's Marco Haller, the Austrian from Katusha.
And he's crucial. He's
a
one of the
crucial lead-out
right-hand man for Christoph. So maybe if he doesn't go over Cipressa, but I would think that his job, and that's why he's Acevedo, his team manager, is pushing him in. It's crucial that he gets back, because he needs to make sure that Christoph gets into the Cipressa in a good position.
He certainly does. Very unfortunate set of circumstances there for Katusha, but meanwhile up ahead the race continues. The other rider that went down in that crash was Alan Marangoni of Cannondale Pro Cycling, but meanwhile we have Barta just attacking, and with him he has Mirko Maestri of Bardiani CSF. These are the two riders out in front, two very powerful riders indeed. And meanwhile the chase behind, looks like that's Albacini on the front. Very strong rider indeed, really stamping on the pedals now. I think that's indicative now, Brian. These guys aren't hanging around. This is about making this as difficult as possible. And another fallen out from Etixx. His crashes left, right and centre. That's Julien Vermont from Belgium. It doesn't look particularly good for Vermont. Number of riders being put out the back. That just shows the pressure and how stressful this race is coming in towards the back end, Brian.
Yeah, you go through these small roads, through the towns, twisting and turning. Everybody knows that this turn is coming up within the next 5 kilometres. Big pressure for everybody to get position, and you really need a strong team at this moment to look after your leaders. If you're at the back, this is what you have to put up with.
And I think a lot of the crashes, as we've said, are or do appear to be at the back. The slow motion replay, that's all game over, unfortunately, for Vermont. A component part, of course, a vital part. We stressed earlier on how important every single team member was. The riders at this level aren't just there for the ride, they have a set objective, a set task. So a rider unfortunately out of the mix for Etixx-Quickstep. But there's been a bit of a regrouping up front. The rider from Bardiani is now back in the mix, Maestri. And still they ride. Barta really powering on ahead. And this is the moment when Jiminas Bagdonos of AG2R finally caught by the bunch. A bit of a shake of his head, but it's been a long, long day, and some brave riding there from the rider from AG2R. 31.2 kilometres to go, 38 seconds is the lead. This is getting stressful. Oh, almost another crash there, Brian. It's making me stressed.
Yeah, exactly, and this is where you need 2 or 3 of your teammates to just bury themselves and get you to the front and keep you to the front. So crucial, this part of the race, because it just, you know, it's where the race can be lost, and you can see in the left-hand side Lotto NL Jumbo right up towards the front, but very nervous conditions in the peloton at the moment, as we see some of the BMC and the Cofidis riders also towards the front of the peloton.
And interestingly, team at Lotto NL Jumbo are at the front as well in that waspish kit, the red, yellow and white. And remember, they've got a very, very good rider in the mix for them, Sepp Van Mark. He's had a quiet couple of years, Van Mark, but there he is in third wheel in the centre of your screen. Remember, second in Paris-Roubaix to Fabien Cancellara just a couple of years back, up there in the Tour of Flanders, and has openly said in the media that he's feeling very, very strong. And of course, they do have Chilinghi in the break. Still there, but another rider we haven't really talked too much about, Sepp Van Mark, and he certainly has the attributes to stay at the sharp end of this race over the final climb, Brian. Yeah,
maybe not the fastest in the sprint, but someone that can do something over these 2 climbs, and that's what they're looking after today. They've had Chilinghi in the breakaway. Unfortunately, they started without Hofland, who's a good enough sprinter to get a good position for them in San Remo, but looks as if they are going with their man Sepp Van Mark.
And another crash here. Looks like Peter Kenyak is caught in that crash for Team Sky. Also there.
A lot of Orica green.
It did look like Michael Matthews is stuck in that crash.
Francais de Jeu.
Well, several significant riders there. Let's have a look who's there. William Bonnet. Yeah. Is that Arnaud Demare there as well? And one of the riders from Dimension Data. Looks like, is that Steve Cummings on the floor? Not too sure. Well, it definitely was. Michael Matthews caught in the mix. One of the riders from Cannondale. Tinkoff also caught up.
Again, Geraint Thomas.
It is Geraint Thomas. It won't be Geraint Thomas's day, and this crash, Brian, looks like it happened right at the front of the peloton.
Yeah. Taking a lot of riders out, just trying to see. Looks as if it happened right at the front, taking out a lot of favourites. Michael Matthews, we believe, is in there. Geraint Thomas, possibly the Dimension Data rider could have been Mark Renshaw, but yeah, just very nervy conditions, compression in the bunch, and all of a sudden your race goes up in flames.
It certainly does. I don't know who that rider is from Cannondale.
Looks to me like it could be Schlachter.
But number 3, there's Danny Bernardi, another vital component of the Tinkoff team. Peter Sagan. Bernardi has had a great year, has had a win himself in Andalusia, but has been riding so well in the service of Peter Sagan. So Bernardi also out of the mix, but meanwhile up ahead, 32 seconds for our 2 leaders.
Serge Pauls, I think it is.
It does look like Pauls. And you can see Michael Matthews' number just behind him on the floor. Been ripped from the Scott frame. But up ahead, Greg Van Avermaet is still there. Nasser Bouhanni is still there. The pugnacious French sprinter still in the mix, as is Alejandro Valverde. .7 kilometres to go of a fast and ferocious Milan-San Remo. We still have 6 riders out in front with a slender lead of 31 seconds. And there is the composition. Maestri of Bardiani, Kluger of Yam Cycling, Chalingi of Lotto NL Jumbo, Balta of Bora Argon 18. But significantly behind, we've had several high-profile crashes. Michael Matthews has come down. Peter Kenyak has also crashed. It looks like Geraint Thomas also crashed too. Several big names have had their hopes dashed in this race. And again, so stressful. Mark Cavendish described this race as like an opera building to a crescendo, and that is exactly what is happening now. 3 teams driving hard on the front at the moment. Greg Van Avermaet, one of the pre-race favourites, has come through those crashes and skirmishes completely unscathed. He's still in the mix. I've also spotted Vincenzo Nibali. So several of the favourites still there, but very stressful back end of this race, Brian.
Yeah, we expected it anyway, but we don't like to see anybody crashing out. But Quinziato doing a very good job looking after Van Avermaet. Valverde's over towards the left-hand side. Giant came up on the right-hand side looking after Simon Getchka and Waitens. Also, you can see Bouhanni getting looked after by Cofidis in the reds. Also in the white just behind, you can see Bonifacio, I think it is, looking after Cancellara, and Luke Rowe, Stannard. You can see Edvard Bosenhagen right up there. Very nervy times, and it's all about this next right-hand turn.
It is also, yeah, in Stannard was there. Luke Rowe just tucked in on the inside. It looked like Ben Swift was just tucked in behind as well, just slightly obscured.
Here we go. Right-hand turn now.
This is the right-hand turn. And on the slopes of this climb now, this is a significant, pivotal point in this race. The Cipressa. What is happening behind? There's a fight for position at the head of affairs. This group driving themselves to try and stay away as long as they can. Kluger now being detached under the impetus of Matteo Bono. He's been in this situation before. The slopes of the Cipressa. The bunches on that. Meanwhile, behind, Michael Matthews just there, just in the right-hand corner of your screen, fighting to get back into contact in this race. Also there is Arnaud Demare, one of the outside favourites of France, the former French road champion, in good form, took a stage off Paris-Nice. Still not quite in contact. They're at least a minute behind our leaders. This is the climb of the Cipressa, and what they face is 5.65 kilometres in length, 4.1% average, and kicks up at its maximum midway through the climb, 9%. But Bono now taking up the pacemaking. And Team Sky moving up the outside there. Ian Stannard, one of the protagonists in this race a couple of years ago. He's finished in the top 10 in really difficult conditions, but now Katusha setting the tempo. Meanwhile, more and more riders feeling the fatigue of this race and unable to hold on any longer.
Yeah, Katusha doing a very good job at the moment, only 17 seconds behind this group. They won't worry too much about this group. They've been in front in the first few kilometres of this race and are about to be swept up. But Katusha controlling the peloton, just keeping at a nice tempo. But I would think that this is going to be a little bit too slow for some of these teams with they want to be a little bit more aggressive, and that's why we're seeing Astana trying to keep the pressure on. Ian Stannard comes up into second place. You can see Lotto-Soudal on the right coming up, but this is good for Christoph. They'll just control things from the front. Don't ride too hard, just ride a steady tempo, but I think it'll be too easy for a lot of the teams without a big sprinter. You can see Nibali up towards the front, expecting an aggressive finale from him.
Well, despite the crashes, still a large number of riders still in contention. Peter Sagan, the world road champion, sitting about 20th wheel. Greg Van Avermaet there as well. But the pace being set, as you said, Brian, by Astana, trying to keep it as high as possible. 5 riders now in front as Kluger loses contact. Chalingi, Barta, Maestri, Bono and Koldan of Trek. Segafredo, Jan Barta now of the Czech Republic, driving hard on the front, still looking full of fight. Ian Stannard of Team Sky, the former British road champion, a very distinctive style, rolling the pedals round, always looks comfortable, tends to ride in a larger gear. But again, the pace that's been set here doesn't look to me, Brian, as if it's hard enough, not selective enough. There's Simon Geschke, the bearded German for Giant Alpecin. And Astana now coming to the front just to try and make this as difficult as possible, to try and make this a more select group. Just looking midway down the group, there is the World Championship bands of Peter Sagan. 15 seconds is now the lead, and I think by the top of the Cipressa, or even before, Brian, we'll see as 6 leaders or 5 leaders now mopped up by a peloton that is really starting to light this pace up.
Yeah, Katusha got the best possible positioning into the bottom of the Cipressa, and I've relinquished that lead to Astana now. So that was the goal, to put Christoph in a good place, teammates round about him, keep it as steady as possible. But Astana are wanting to make this as hard as possible. They do not have an out-and-out sprinter, so they want to make it as difficult as possible. So well after 6 hours of racing, the whole peloton are now all back together. So the breakaway is now been swept up. So we're back together with the peloton now being led by Astana.
Well, Bono still on the front, and finally they are all together with 25 kilometres to go of the 107th edition of this legendary race. A few cracks starting to appear in the peloton. That'll be just as the group that was away are reabsorbed by the peloton. Their legs will be absolutely screaming now. But finally the bunch starts to string out. This is the only way that Astana can try and win this race. They need to whittle this group down. They need to make it as hard as possible for the sprinters. So that's why we're seeing the bright blue of Astana on the front, driving hard. Also there, Tinkoff and Team Sky also there in number 2. Midway up the Cipressa, the penultimate climb of Milan-San Remo, and the bunch now pressing onwards. The team of Vincenzo Nibali try another crash. I cannot believe the amount of crashes I'm seeing in this race, Brian. Another touch of wheels there, taking out one of the riders from Cannondale. And still up ahead, the pace being set by Astana. I can just see Greg Van Avermaet on the inside. He's looking very comfortable indeed. Edvald Boasson-Hagen there lurking in the Norwegian champions jersey, just on the wheel of Peter Sagan. But this is so stressful, and first time I've seen Fabian Cancellara looking so comfortable.
This is Kreuziger taking it up at the front for Tinkoff, and we've already seen that Astana won it hard, Tinkoff won it hard as well, so does BMC, and that's the teams towards the front. But you can just see the world champion sitting 4th wheel behind him in the white and the black. Difference in his jersey, that is Cancellara of Trek Segafredo.
And there's the Cancellara fan club here at the finish in San Remo, and it is Roman Kreuziger just trying to set a pace. Though Mark Cavendish, the former winner of this race, starting to suffer on the slopes of the Cipressa, not looking particularly comfortable, but again he was an outside bet. And I'm sure he'll be back again, but still a sizable group here. Kreuziger sat on the front. There's still a large number of riders, but the big question is, has Arnaud Demare and Michael Matthews, one of the pre-race favourites, managed to get back in contact? Several of the fast men been taken out by crashes, and look at the devastation behind. That's a combination of riders trying to get back in contact and also riders being detached because of the pace being set at the front.
Yeah, when you get out of position and you have to make efforts trying to come back, these crashes on the coast road, even on this climb, you can just see riders starting to pull out. It's just the speed at the front. Go around these corners, it's elastic band effect, and they can't hold on, unfortunately.
That's Kevin Bretza, the rider from FDJ, just looking over his shoulder. He's dropped to the back of the group. He'll have got radio information that his teammate and protected rider Demare has been detached. There is still a possibility for him to get back in contact, as for Michael Matthews too. We have a flat section after the descent of the Cipressa before we hit the climb of the Poggio, but how much has it taken out of them?
So you just seen the former world champion Kwiatkowski has been brought to the front as well. So Ian Stannard is looking after him, so he's right up there towards the front and the inside.
He certainly is. Stannard just brought Kwiatkowski to the front there. Still around, I don't know, 90, 100 riders in this front group. And you can just see a little group of riders, a little clutch of riders trying to fight to get back in contact. But this is actually getting quite tactical now, just by the shape of the bunch. Normally, we're so used at this stage of the race, Brian, to seeing either at least 3 or 4 riders still up the road. But Gianni Visconti, the Tuscan, now attacks, and he is flanked by Ian Stannard.
Yeah, we just said that one of the teams that's they're UCI #1 team over the last couple of years. They don't have an out-and-out sprinter. They have got Lobato, but they need to make it as hard as possible. So on the Cipressa, we're starting to see the attacks. Visconti to the front there, Ian Stannard going with it. No reaction yet from the rest of the peloton.
No reaction at all. A real sharp, stinging attack from Visconti, an extremely good climber who knows these roads extremely well. The double Italian road champion. And I tell you what, he's got a great rider for company, somebody who will always work hard. But what will the job be? Will Stannard happily work with him, or will he just sit there? It'll be interesting to see now riders from Cannondale trying to make the junction too.
Yeah, you could see, I think it's a BMC rider going, and no way that's going without a Tinkoff rider, so it's shut down straight away by Tinkoff. I think it could be Van Barle of Cannondale right at the front, but still 2 riders of Stannard, Visconti, just about 50 metres off the front of this peloton.
Well, Ian Stannard, the former British road champion, drives as hard as he can over the top of the Cipressa. It won't be long before they crest the climb. Then they have the steep descent before the flat road, and then the approach of the Poggio. But Ian Stannard so strong, and there's another attack there. 2 dangerous riders out in front. That's why we're seeing BMC and Tinkoff trying to be represented in that move. And BMC now almost blocking the road there, Brian. 1 rider trying to clip across the gap, 3 spread across the road. And meanwhile, Visconti and Stannard working very well together. Another quick glance behind just to see if anybody's coming across. 22 kilometres to go for this pair.
Yeah, it's setting itself up nicely, and you can see BMC trying to get involved with this attack as well, put the pressure on the other teams. But some other reactions from looks like Lotto-Soudal in the mix, is that Androni as well. But the team setting the tempo at the front looks as if it's Katusha for Christoph.
I think one of the riders from Androni, Giogattoli, I think it was the tall rider of Mirko Selvaggi, I think. Vincenzo Nibali also there on the right-hand side in the Italian road champions jersey. He's looking pretty good at the moment, but so many riders still in the mix. As I said, Edvald Bersenhagen there, Simon Geschke, Peter Sagan still sitting pretty, not panicking at all. Looks like Stibar is also there, zipping up his jersey now for the descent. Ian Stannard, 11 seconds for these two. The little bottleneck there causing riders to slam on the brakes. Absolute chaos in Milan-San Remo, especially at the back end of the peloton. Such a stressful closing few stages of this race. But this is the way generally this race pans out. It builds to this stressful crescendo. Riders taking risks, riders extremely nervous, touching wheels. And here we have the slow motion as the road narrows to that very tight pinch point, slowing riders down, causing that whiplash effect. 16 seconds, 17 seconds now for our 2 leaders. A very interesting move for Movistar and Team Sky.
There is, and this descent can be just as hard as the ascent, because they're going down it so fast. A lot of twists and turns and slowing down, and last place you want to be is at the back of this peloton. So 2 riders still in front, Stannard and Visconti. The chase down from Lotto-Soudal at the front, Etixx right up there as well, but we did see that there were numbers there for Katusha.
Yeah, Katusha well to the fore. Set it up at the bottom of the Cipressa, but the pace wasn't hard enough. Still lots of riders still in the mix, and some demon descending skills here from Ian Stannard. Now 28 years of age, he's finished in the top 5 in this race. A few years back, was 6th actually in 2013.
This is why a lot of the teams come to this area year after Paris-Nice and Tirreno, just to look at these corners again, because you can forget in a year. And this is really important when you've got a fast descent off the Cipressa and the Poggio. Just refresh your mind.
Well, Stannard descending extremely well, taking those corners like he's on rails. Visconti just dropping off the wheel. Sometimes that is a good idea, especially if you think that a rider's maybe just pushing a little bit too hard. Always a good idea to drop off the wheel. But I tell you what, the descending skills of Ian Stannard has opened up this lead. He's plummeting down the descent of the Cipressa. Visconti, 10 metres, 5 metres off his wheel, picking his line. An absolutely thrilling finale to Milan-San Remo. Just under 20 kilometres to go now. .22 seconds is the lead on the descent of the Cipressa for Giovanni Visconti of Italy and the Spanish Movistar team. With him for company, he has Ian Stannard of Team Sky. He knows this race extremely well. Actually looks like that gap has narrowed a little bit, Brian, to be honest. It certainly doesn't look like it's 20 seconds at the moment. It's Lotto-Soudal who lead the chase. 2 riders from Etixx just on the wheel there. And it looks like Peter Kenyak has just got to the back of the peloton again. He was one of the riders, along with his teammate Geraint Thomas, who was caught in that crash. This is the view. It's heart in your mouth stuff. That's the bottom of the descent now. This is where Visconti needs to get back in contact with Ian Stannard, sit in his slipstream for a bit and then start working.
But they've got 9 kilometres now, Matt, on this road until they turn right up the Poggio. You can just see the group just behind them. It's only a matter of 10 seconds, even if that. So it does look as if it's coming back together. Lotto-Soudal was the rider in front, but what an effort there from Peter Kenyak to come back after that crash and get to the back of this peloton.
Well, he easily lost at least 30 seconds or so, and there he is just at the bottom of the Cipressa. And now, as you say, Brian, 9 kilometres to the foot of the final climb of the day in the form of the Poggio. And that certainly doesn't look like 12 seconds to me. It looks more like 5 or 6 seconds. 2 very dangerous riders. And the other teams will not want to let Ian Stannard go clear. They know how strong he is. Just look back to his victories in Het Nieuwsblad a couple of years ago. So strong, monstrously strong, in fact. And a couple of markers being sent across. It looks like Daniel Oss, actually, the Italian rider for BMC. This is what he did last year with Geraint Thomas. He went clear on the climb of the Cipressa with Thomas. They were a very powerful duo in this flat section before the final climb, but not a surprise to see BMC in the mix. And it looks like an interesting little nucleus of riders is just forming off the front of the bunch here, Brian. Yeah,
you've got 4 strong teams, and everybody will have to be aware here. But still a long way to go, 17 kilometres, and this is where, if you've got the legs, you can open up a bit of a gap, but it does look as if Oss doesn't want to contribute. One rider from AG2R clips across there, and that's number 16, Montaguti.
Yeah, Montaguti of AG2R, the last man in this group. Also there, it looks like it's Fabio Sabatini of Etixx. So Visconti happy to drive this group. He's put himself in a good position, but what it does mean is that Katusha have to chase, and also really Tinkoff you think have to chase, but Katusha happy to take it up at the moment. There's a rider from Lotto assisting in the chase too. Also a rider from Southeast at the head of affairs. But Katusha, the only team chasing, and BMC happy just to marshal this. And interesting that Sabatini is there. And this group now working well as a unit. 5 very strong riders going clear, putting pressure on the teams of the favourites in the form of Katusha and Tinkoff. Visconti takes his turn at the front. Sabatini rolls through. So we have 4 Italians in this move and 1 rider from Great Britain.
But it's the teams that are represented here. You have got 5 fairly strong teams, and that's where you see the K's in the back of the Katusha team. They want to try and get involved with the chase. It does look as if it's Steve Cummings that's made its way to the front of this group and is trying to help out the chase.
Yeah, Steve Cummings had a very memorable Tirreno Adriatico. Took that fantastic stage win. He was supposed to be working for his team leader Edvald Bersenhagen, and in fact he was working for him, found himself in a move, and in a virtuoso performance of strength and skill took off that victory. They are not represented in this move, and they do have strength in depth. That's why we're seeing Cummings trying to assist in the chase, because this group is working extremely well. Just look at the strength and power of Stannard as he rolls through. Visconti pedaling a noticeably higher cadence.
Sabatini not interested in working at the back here, very experienced
no
lead-out
surprise.
man. So Etixx, he knows there's 4 other strong riders in front of him, so he's going to do just a kind of policing role at the moment. 15 seconds with just under 15 kilometres to go. The bottom of the Poggio comes with 9 kilometres to go.
It certainly does. This was the sort of lead that we saw last year when Geraint Thomas and Daniel Oss, I think they had around 25 seconds roughly approaching the final climb of the day. Still a lot of riders in this group, a far bigger peloton than we saw last year.
Yeah, but a tired peloton, that's the difference. There's probably 20 riders that are feeling pretty good, and the rest of them are kind of hanging on and hanging towards the back. But this is probably the last chance you'll get of using any of your teammates on this flat piece of road. Does look as if it's Steve Cummings helping Katusha try and ride this one down.
Well, Steve Cummings swings off on the front. Katusha take up the chase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 riders on the front, and then 2 riders from BMC. They'll be blocking. Another troop moves up the outside. Several riders there from the Androni Giocattoli team. Looks like Pelizzotti is there. Luke Rowe just sat in the centre. Etixx-Quickstep now moving up the outside. The other big World Tour team that aren't represented, of course, in the move is Team Astana, the squad of Vincenzo Nibali, the Tour de France champion in 2014. Would like to dearly win this race, but he will have to go clear alone. But the gap now holding steady. 14 seconds is the lead for our 5 riders out in front. Sabatini sandbagging at the back, but as you say, he's certainly not the protected rider. But he's done well to infiltrate this little move. But all the other riders happy to roll through. Stannard has a look over his shoulder. Visconti takes his turn at the front. This is going to be an absolutely fascinating finale to this 107th edition of Milan-San Remo. Katusha, the team, certainly with the pressure on their shoulders. They are the out-and-out favourite, or one of the out-and-out favourites. Not surprisingly, Orica Greenedge not in number at the front. I'd imagine they're trying to see, trying to come to terms with what's happened, trying to reconfigure, make an assessment. We don't know, we haven't got confirmation if Michael Matthews is back in the mix, but if there's any chance for him to do it, he needs to do it now. He certainly won't be able to do it on the slopes of the Poggio.
Yeah, obviously Sabatini feeling bad at the moment, just gives Visconti a little push there onto the wheel, but this is a battle now for a position. Kenyuk on the left hand side trying to bring Kwiatkowski up. On the right hand side, Francis de Jure looks as if they're trying to look after Demare, but Sagan has only got 2 riders with him and round about him. They are not riding at the front. They've already lost Benatti with the crash, used up the riders earlier on. Coming deep into this race, Sagan, like he does pretty much always in these big races, he's pretty much on his own, but we know he can do it, but he'll want to try and keep at least 1 rider, or 2 would be brilliant if they got over the top of the Poggio with him.
He certainly would. Having teammates around you is so important at the back end of this race, just to shield you from the wind, just to close those little gaps. A little bit of brinkmanship here at the back. Montaguti forcing Ian Stannard to get back to the front. This is what you see if a rider isn't willing to take a turn. They might drop back and what we call trying to take a rider out of the back. Unsurprising to see tactics at such a critical point of the race. but the gap still holding steady. They haven't managed to eat into the lead, holding steady at 15 seconds now. And another rider for Dimension Data has joined Steve Cummings at the front. Jan Barter, the back marker for this group. Remember, he was away earlier on, and it looks like actually the lead is coming down, although the gap is foreshortened. It won't be long before they hit the bottom of the Poggio. That comes with 9.2 k's to go, so only a couple of kilometres before they hit the final climb of the day. And there is Tinkoff's Peter Sagan, resplendent in those world champions rainbow bands. He's world champion, still yet to win a monument. Will today be his day, as the junction is nearly made? The junction has been made. Our 5 leaders are just about to be caught by the peloton, which has been led by Katusha and Dimension Data. In only 2 kilometres time, the riders will reach the foot slopes of the Poggio, and what they face is a climb 3.7 kilometres in length. Average gradient of only 3.7, but it's the speed of this climb, and again the steepest point of the Poggio, 8%, but an extremely fast climb. And this isn't the team that we expect to see at the front. Androni Giogattoli, lots of riders still in contention, but this isn't the finish that we certainly expected. But that is the thing with this race. It is a race that always throws you curveballs. Peter Kenyak there, Brian, has managed to make it back. A good ride from him.
He's done a very good job. He's just shepherded Kwiatkowski up towards the front, but this is a last-ditch effort by a lot of these riders to get a good position coming onto the Poggio in just over a kilometre's time. Tinkoff leading it on, but Astana there in some numbers with Nibali up towards the front. So is the world champion, but it's Kreuziger again for Tinkoff leading the peloton.
Yeah, Roman Kreuziger, the Czech, an extremely good climber, still looking around to seeing where his team leader is. It won't be long now, only about 700 metres before they hit the bottom of the Poggio. They'll swing right onto the climb. Team NL Lotto NL Jumbo. Oh, just coming into that out of that roundabout. Very, very sharp indeed. There's the stats for the Poggio. Maximum 8%, 3.7% average, and 3.7 kilometres in length. Then they have the 3.5 kilometre descent, and then it's only 2 k's to the finish line on the Via Roma. And Daniel Oss, the Italian for BMC, takes it up at the front, and in second wheel, a little bit too close to the front for me, is Greg Van Avermaet. And then the Spanish champion in fourth wheel, Alejandro Valverde. Luke Rowe is also there for Team Sky. Michał Kwiatkowski not too far away either.
No, just bringing up, is going to swing just slightly to the right round this corner, and it'll be onto the Poggio. But you better look at the back there. Michael Matthews has actually made it to the back, so
well spotted, Bright.
Some riding for Michael Matthews, but he's going to hit the bottom of this climb, and all of a sudden riders in front of him are going to lose the wheel. Yeah,
it's incredible that Matthews has managed to get back in contact. We saw him chasing furiously in the convoy. Remember, he was third in this race last year, and there they are. Luke Rowe leads the peloton on to the Poggio. They are all together. Luke Rowe of Wales and Great Britain wants to try and whittle this group down. It's all about going as hard as you can to try and take the group over the top of this climb, eliminate the sprinters. But again, they're all across the road. This isn't the sort of pace that will favour some of the more punchier riders. At the moment, things are falling into the hands of the sprinters. A flick of the elbow from Luke Rowe. He wants some assistance in the pacemaking.
Yeah, it's going to slow it down, and nobody really wants to take it on. Katusha are happy with this pace. They'll just control things. Christoph is sitting third wheel, just moving up onto his teammate's wheel now. BMC are there with Van Avermaet. You can see the world champion moving out there. So I think this is the calm before the storm. We're going to see some action here because these riders cannot wait.
I've just spotted Ben Swift also there, as well as Michał Kwiatkowski. Ben Swift, former third place in this race a couple of years back, so he can perform well, and he's been riding extremely well. Hasn't registered a win, but he's been sprinting well, climbing well as well. But the way, look at the shape of the bunch here. This is something we're not used to in the finale of Milan-San Remo. This is becoming extremely tactical. Normally this is one long line. Still the pace enough to see several riders losing contact. Stein Vandenberg fighting to stay in contact in the blue there. Big acceleration there from Marco Frapporti of Androni Giocattoli. And two teams on the front now. BMC on the left-hand side in the black and red, and in the white and red it's Katusha. But Katusha happy, rather than rip this to pieces, happy just to set a tempo that's not too hard. What they don't want to do is put Alexander Kristoff in too much danger. This is very, very tactical indeed, all across the road. This is probably the steadiest I've seen the bunch ascend this climb in recent years. Yeah,
I'm just looking at where Astana are. I'm expecting an acceleration from Nibali. He said yesterday that he was going to ride it aggressively. It's being controlled by the sprinters teams at this moment. Nobody wanting to take it on, so I'm kind of surprised at this moment, but we'll see a little bit further up this climb. We'll start to see some attacking.
We certainly will. One or two riders now just feeling the pain, not managing to stay in contact.
Matthews is starting to lose a little bit. He's still at the back of this peloton. Sabatini, who is in the breakaway, but another compression causes a reaction. Still no reaction at the front of the peloton. Katusha are now in control.
Well, a couple of riders have slipped their gears there. It looks like somebody had a problem in the middle of the peloton, causing riders to brake just around that corner. But here's an attack from one of the riders from the southeast, trying his luck on the climb. 7.5 kilometres to go, really starting to string things out. Says it's Pippo Pozzato. Doesn't look like it's Pozzato to me. It's number 180. That certainly isn't Pozzato. 186, sorry. That's Andrea Fedi, trying his luck on the climb for the Pro Continental Southeast Venezuela team. Checks the gap. Moving at speed now is Fedi, looking very, very good at the moment. It's going to be hard to stay away, but fair play. That's what we needed to see. We needed some aggression on this climb, and the bunch now starting to thin out. Here's the moment that Fedi took his chance. Big acceleration on the left-hand side. Just going past the three Katusha riders on the front, and it's still those three Katusha riders driving hard. And now an attack on the right-hand side from Astana.
Yeah, you've seen the attack there, and I'm not too sure who it is, but definitely not Nibali, but a definite attack there by Astana. Noticed that Lars Bohm was right up there towards the front, but again, no big reaction now. But 6.8, the top of this climb comes with 5.5, so just over 1 kilometre to the top of the Poggio.
1,200 metres to the top of the Poggio for Andrea Fedi of southeast Venezuela. The bunch lined out behind. The accumulation of fatigue now reaching its zenith. Riders getting popped from the back of this group, but Fedi incredibly is still clear. Let's have a look behind at what's happening. A couple of riders have managed to ride clear of the bunch. A rider from Astana and a rider from FDJ. Now Lotto-Soudal. And Team Sky also in the mix too. Kwiatkowski there, going clear.
Galopin on the attack now, so it's all over for the southeast rider and François de Jeux. So Tony Galopin now on the attack for Lotto-Soudal.
Tony Galopin of Lotto-Soudal, 9th place in Milan-San Remo last year, and in very, very good form at the moment, putting some real torque through the bike now. And another attack on the right-hand side, just trying to bridge the gap for Tinkoff. Trying to bring this man to heel. He's definitely a dangerous rider. And now Kwiatkowski goes on the right-hand side for Team Sky with the rainbow bands, the former world road champion. What an extremely powerful attack from the pole.
And it's left up to Gatto of Tinkoff, but behind Gatto you've got Cancellara of Trek Segafredo, and then you've got the world champion Peter Sagan, Greg Van Avermaet, Nibali still up there, Valverde. So a lot of riders still towards the front of this race, but it's starting to thin out. But Kwiatkowski is gone, but he's only got a matter of 20-30 metres.
Think back this time last year, it was another Team Sky rider, Geraint Thomas, who crested the top of the climb, only to be caught just as the road descended. There's a slight plateau at the top before they swing left down the descent. Oscar Gatto was chasing it, looks like he's now blown. Michał Kwiatkowski powers over the top of this climb. Another attack, it looks like that's Vincenzo Nibali. He senses the danger. Nibali, we know he can descend with the best. There's the left-hand turn. Kwiatkowski takes the turn in first place, closely followed by Nibali, who's leading the bunch down. Peter Sagan, the world road champion, is just behind him. Just look at the damage, the attack by Kwiatkowski. Peter Kenyak at the back end of the bunks trying to get in contact. We've got 5 very steep hairpin bends to negotiate. A lot of other sweeping bends too, and then 2 kilometres to the run into the finish. Kwiatkowski only has a couple of seconds lead, and it's Vincenzo Nibali, the Italian champion, who leads the chase behind.
Yeah, Nibali waited late and tried to go across to Kwiatkowski. He's a very good descender. Kwiatkowski is going to do well to hang on to this. I don't think it will be possible, because right behind him, one of the best descenders in the peloton, Nibali, with Cancellara on his wheel.
Nibali now in the blue, Cancellara just behind him. Cancellara, the former winner back in 2008, riding supremely well this season. The gap to Kwiatkowski is now coming down. It's not 4 seconds. It's more like just a couple of seconds. You can just see Alejandro Valverde, the Spanish champion, in about 5th wheel, just on his wheel with Edvald Boasson-Hagen of Dimension Data, the Norwegian champion. Very distinctive in his champion's kit.
It's important to see near the frontier, Marcus. Nibali is there, Cancellara. You've also got the world champion right up towards the front. I think this is that Trentin that's up there, Valverde, and the Norwegian champion with the Tony Galopin right on the wheel.
There was a slight relaxing in the pace there. Nibali swung off, but Fabian Cancellara wasn't willing to take up the pacemaking. One of the key factors on this descent, it's not just the ability to descend quickly. You need to be able to accelerate harshly out of the corners to make sure you keep your momentum going. But Fabian Cancellara as well is a consummate descender, getting very, very low on his bike. Just a couple of seconds lead now for the former world road champion. This is the riders at the back end of the peloton now. Ben Swift looks like he's lost contact. Another crash there.
Well, that was the corner that they fell last year on, so unfortunately for the Française de Joux rider, and it does look as if just in front of Swift was Michael Matthews.
That was Anthony Roux of FDJ who came to grief there, but Kwiatkowski still persevering. 3.9 kilometres to go of Milan-San Remo. The riders now are looking behind. Peter Sagan, not willing to chase, it looks, takes a nonchalant sip from his bottle on that right-hand bend, forcing Vincenzo Nibali to attack on the left-hand side. 3 seconds is the lead for Michał Kwiatkowski of Team Sky. Remember, Team Sky have been around since 2010. They've won the Tour de France, of course, on 3 occasions. They've never won a monument. Will this be their day? Vincenzo Nibali is the first of the pre-race favourites to show his hand. Desperation now at the final of this race. The gap has opened up for Kwiatkowski, remonstrating with the motorbike. Could this be Kwiatkowski's moment? 3Ks to go, Brian. Fascinating scenes on the descent of the Poggio.
Well, this is what he did, attack early to win the World Championships. Valverde now comes to the front, but Trentin is on the wheel, Nibali's there, but how many riders are there to bring Kwiatkowski back?
Well, a fascinating finale to the 107th edition of Milan-San Remo. We have one lone leader with 5 seconds. It's the former world road champion, Michał Kwiatkowski of Poland and Team Sky. We're just coming to the bottom of the descent of the Poggio. Another attack from Lotto, a real unwillingness, no concerted chase. Kwiatkowski adopts an unorthodox style. Just hits the bottom, just over 2 kilometres to go now for the pole. He holds a very slender lead indeed over the chase, but there isn't a concerted chase. It's 1 or 2 riders trying their hand at all. Matteo Trentin looks like the rider of Etixx on second wheel there. As we draw back, there's the lead for Michał Kwiatkowski. A slender 4 seconds is all he has as we come into the run-in. One of the riders in the mix there is Oscar Gatto. This is our lone leader. Can Michał Kwiatkowski take his the first monument for Team Sky?
Well, it's still possible, but I don't think now with Etixx now riding on the front, coming off this descent. Now we get an attack here from Cancellara on the left-hand side.
Well, Cancellara goes on the left-hand side. A big move there. Nobody can really go with him. Look at that. There's a rider from Etixx fighting to stay in contact with Fabian Cancellara. This will all be eating into the lead of Michał Kwiatkowski. It says that the gap is 5 seconds. It certainly looks like it's not. He's been mopped up. Flying Cancellara. It's Matteo Trentin on the wheel, and it looks like it's all going to come back together for a sprint on that Via Roma.
Yeah, he can't take Trentin to the finish, but Peter Sagan is right up there. But it's Boasson-Hagen goes on the right-hand side, followed by Van Avermaet.
Edvald Boasson-Hagen goes on the right-hand side, opens up. It's not really a sprint. It's gone very, very early indeed. Greg Van Avermaet fighting to stay in contact. 1 kilometre to go. Van Avermaet just makes contact with Edvald Boasson-Hagen, the fountain on the right-hand side. They've got another right-hander still to go. It's all coming together. It looks like it's Fernando Gaviria, one of the riders from Etixx-Quickstep's also there. We're well into the last 500 metres of this race. The junction now made. Greg Van Avermaet into the slipstream of Edvald Boasson-Hagen. 4 riders have just managed to move clear of the peloton. Who is it going to be? Fabian Cancellara is also there. It looks like Jens de Busscher, the former Belgian champion, also in the mix. This is absolutely fascinating. Who is going to take it up in the final? There's a crash! A big crash. Looks like Gaviria has gone. Here is the final sprint. It looks like one of the riders from Lotto-Soudal trying to take it up in the final. Nacer Bouhanni is also there. Arnaud Demare is also there. Ben Swift also in the mix for Team Sky. Who is going to take the victory in the centre? Arnaud Demare is going on the left-hand side. Demare of the FDJ takes the win. Ben Swift is second for Team Sky. Who would have predicted that? What an absolutely fascinating finale of Milan-San Remo. But there you go. Arnaud Demare crashed earlier on, made contact with the leaders and delivered on the day. Brian Smith, I am worn out.
What a dramatic finish there, and what a win it is for France de Dieu. They upped their game in the Tirreno team time trial. They came there, delivered a good result. Unfortunately for Gaviria, he looked as if he was in a great place. There was question marks over his form, what he would be like sprinting after 300 kilometres. We don't know now because he crashed, but what a huge win it is for Demare and France de Dieu. You see what it means to them. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be for the late attack from Van Avermaet. Another great position for the rider from Team Sky, Ben Swift. Here it happened here. You've got Boasson-Hagen at the front, bang, just a look behind. Gaviria was taken down. At this stage, it was a case of, was it Tony Galopin taking it on? Van Avermaet was still there, Bouhanni was there, but Demare comes from a fair way back. Ben Swift had the perfect lead out here, but in the end, he just didn't have the power to come over the top of Demare. Demare showed us what he can do in Paris-Nice. He delivered probably the biggest win of his career.
And there is the moment that Demare changed the face of his career. Ben
that
Swift in
Jurgen
second
Roelandts,
place.
Was in third.
It was Roelandts in third. Yeah. Well spotted there, Brian. Gaviria in tears at the finish. Just a momentary lapse in concentration. Although I wouldn't want to guarantee it, I would not be surprised to see that man at some point in the future win this race. But it wasn't to be today. We talked about his prospects at the start of the race, and he was there. But let's not dwell on that too much. Arnaud Demare of France, the 24-year-old former French national road champion, is the winner of Milan-San Remo 2016. Delight in the French camp, the biggest win of Arnaud Demare's career. There's the confirmation. Arnaud Demare of France and FDJ takes the win. Ben Swift, a fine second place in second. Jurgen Roelandts, wonderful ride for the Belgian of Lotto. Nacer Bouhanni is fourth. Van Avermaet, one of the pre-race favourites, fifth. Alexander Kristoff, the former champion, in sixth. Heinrich Hausler, great ride for the Aussie, in seventh. Pozzato also there in eighth. Colbrelli and Matteo Trentin of Etixx-Quickstep round out the top 10. Brian.
What a day for French cycling. The last time a French rider won this race was way back in 1995. They waited so long for a win here, very close to the French border. I tell you what, I don't think anybody predicted Demare, and what a strong sprint it was in the end.
And here is the moment that changed the face of this rider's career. In the centre, in the blue, great bit of riding there. Takes the slipstream of Roelandts. Ben Swift coming round very late, but runs out of tarmac. But what a superbly timed sprint by Arnaud Demare. That is the moment that La Primavera was taken. So this, as we discussed, one of the most unpredictable races. He was an outside favourite. He's in good form. Arnaud Demare took a stage of the Paris-Nice. That was the moment that stalled a few riders. Ben Swift was one of the actual riders who was stalled. Also was Tinkoff's world champion Peter Sagan lost a lot of momentum, but Roelandts looking extremely dangerous there. Bouhanni actually effectively led out Arnaud Demare.
Something happened to his gears, did he not? Something happened to his...
lost a lot of momentum,
bike,
Brian.
Yeah, he sat down and seemed to be in a small gear, but hats off to Demare. And France said adieu for that win there. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be again. Third in Milan-San Remo a couple of years ago for Ben Swift, and you know, an excellent performance. Just looking at Bouhanni in his wheel, just bang, something wrong there. Christophe, first and second in the last couple of years, down in 5th place. But what an exciting finish. And Sagan probably, you know, messed up again, but I don't think he was as strong a sprint as Demare, and just shows you what form he's in.
Well, there we go. You have to go back to 1995. 21 years ago, Laurent Jalabert was the last French winner of this race. And I wonder, well, I'm not going to guess what's going to be on the front page of L'Equipe tomorrow, but I would imagine it's going to be a picture of Arnaud Demare crossing the line, kissing the crowd, and their confirmation again. Arnaud Demare of FDJ, 6 hours, 54 minutes and 45 seconds. An extremely long day in the office, but what a memorable day it was. A memorable day's racing, punctuated at the back end of the race by several crashes, taking out many of the favourites. But what a finale. We had it all, didn't we, Brian? We had that wonderful attack by Michał Kwiatkowski in the final, only to be neutralised by Fabian Cancellara. So much happened in that last kilometre. You can almost write a book on it.
Yeah, Trentin was with Cancellara, so he wasn't going to drag him to the line. And then you had Boasson-Hagen's attack. Van Avermaet realised the danger, and I think that took the punch out Van Avermaet's legs for the sprint.
Well, there's the World Tour rankings. Richie Porte not riding this event, but has had a very, very good start to the year. Richie Porte, Van Avermaet of BMC, so 2 BMC riders at the head of affairs. Sergio Henao in 3rd. Gerrans and Demare moves up by virtue of winning Milan-San Remo. And here's what happened earlier today. Well, Milan-San Remo, a wonderful monument, the opening monument of the year, the first edition way back in 1907, and this the 107th edition. We had 11 riders who went clear very early on. They got a lead of around 10 minutes. Well, that was gradually whittled down. We had Bagdonas, Zvetkov, Maestri, Barta, Kurek, Kluger, Bono, Conti, Chalingi, Perron and Koldan. As we moved along the coast, this group worked very well together, but the bunch didn't let them go too far ahead. We saw Etixx riding on the front, we saw Orica Green Edge, we saw Dimension Data, Lotto, all contributing to the pacemaking. Tinkoff were there as well. And gradually, as we headed towards the Capo climbs, the lead was reduced. There were several crashes, or numerous crashes on the way. I've actually lost count of how many crashes there were in Milan-San Remo today. Several pinch points in the road. A real nervousness in the peloton, especially towards the back end. But dry conditions, very fast average speed. This was one of the earlier crashes that we saw. And this was the Tifosi at the side of the road. Looks like there was a forest fire, to be honest, but that was just the flares. Over-enthusiasm, overzealous, but part of the atmosphere, of course, urging on the riders. There was another crash that took down several of the favourites. This was the crash that actually took down Geraint Thomas and Michael Matthews. Arnaud Demare was actually caught behind one of these crashes. Managed to get back in contact. One of the riders, I think Serge Powell's from Dimension Data. And this is the picture of the man that was to win Milan-San Remo, furiously chasing the man just behind one of the pre-race favourites. That's Michael Matthews. An incredible chase by Arnaud Demare. And this is the moment when the breakaway, all the remnants of the breakaway, were finally caught with 25 kilometres to go on the climb of the Cipressa. There was a lot of riders left in the mix. Katusha trying to set things up for former champion Alexander Kristoff. Riding hard at the front with Dimension Data. Another move went clear with Ian Stannard, Daniel Oss. but that was brought to heel. Monteguti was also there, and they hit the final climb of the Poggio all together. Luke Rowe flicking his elbow, looking for some urgent assistance. And for the first few kilometres of the climb, the pace wasn't particularly hot, but right near the top, the one man certainly did make it hot, absolutely lit up the finale of Milan-San Remo. Former world road champion Michał Kwiatkowski of Poland and Team Sky descended like an absolute demon. Vincenzo Nibali tried his utmost to narrow the gap to bring back the flying Kwiatkowski. And with 2 kilometres to go, Kwiatkowski had a 5-second lead. But it was previous winner and man of the moment, Fabian Cancellara, who brought things back together. He had Fernando Gaviria with him. Gaviria crashed on the final corner. Jurgen Roelandts went long in the sprint. It looked like Nasser Buhani's gears. He had a problem with him, and coming out of the melee in the centre of the picture was Arnaud Demare of France to take a superb victory ahead of Ben Swift, with Roelandts holding on for 3rd place and the first win in 21 years for France in La Primavera. Hoots of delight amongst his teammates. But we have to say, Brian, I mean, Demare, an unexpected winner, but he is in fine form. But what a brave ride by him. Just shows the form he's in to come back from a crash, fight his way back to the head of the peloton and deliver the spoils at the end.